sure we've all had a good summer. Glad to be back. Please can I remind you folks to switch your mobile phones off, onto silent, and please show respect if members of the public or any members are speaking. And I will be carrying on the tradition of approximately at 7 o'clock of having a comfort break, but it will be just for 20 minutes. Okay, that will enable us hopefully to complete the full council agenda. That's a challenge for you tonight. We have some announcements. Sadly, on August the 3rd, Kath Harris, ex-councillor, passed away. Kath was an Ashbrow councillor for 8 years, a cabinet member and also deputy leader for a short time, until her illness sadly prevented her from continuing. Kath bravely fought cancer for 5 years, but she always remained in good spirits and with hope. And she always kept in touch with members and continued to show a great interest in what was happening and also about the gossip that was going round. Kath, very knowledgeable, very down-to-earth, a really, really lovely lady. And Kath loved talking about her family. And Kath was a really good friend to me, and we liked to sit down and chat. And she was usually knitting socks at the time, because we know what an avid knitter Kath was. And she'll be greatly missed. So would anybody else like to say a few words about our Kath? Councillor Homewood, I've got first.
Thank you. I just wanted to sort of echo what you'd said in terms of my experiences with Kath. So I've probably known Kath personally for maybe 6 or 7 years. So the majority of the time that I've known her, unfortunately, she's been ill. But still, throughout that period, she's been so helpful to me. Every time that I've needed anything, she's been on the end of a phone, or I've been round to see her a number of times, and I've been there for hours talking to her about whether it's council things or things in the community or just personal things, and she was always extremely helpful and lovely in the way that she dealt with everybody. And just even through her illness, although she was a little bit tired from she had a quite extensive treatment, her attitude didn't seem to change at all. It was just exactly the same. And from an Ashbrow point of view, she did a massive amount in the time that she was a councillor. And I also know before that from going to her service the other day, the amount she did as a teacher, as a school governor, volunteering in schools, children really was the thing that she was really passionate about. And I know that she was the lead member for Children's Services here, so that was a big part of her life. And I just know that she'll be extremely missed by me and other people in the Huddersfield Labour Party and the wider community.
Thank you, Councillor Homewood. Councillor Pandar, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was at the remembrance service for Kath in the stadium, and the different people that came to that event, it wasn't just a political Labour Party event, people there from all walks of life. And one of the things that sort of got me was the amount of people she actually met in her life, right from the time when she was a young lass from school, going through university, and then working, and her former colleagues who were there. And she was very passionate from whenever she became a teacher, I think. Although she was a teacher in a professional capacity, the kind of work she did, even when she retired and even when she was poorly, she put a lot back into the community. She was fun-loving, hard-working, and she was a very, very good colleague to many, many councillors in this chamber. Because one of the things I got very quickly as leader from other groups was condolences and best wishes from across the party, and that's quite a unique thing. So our best wishes to all the family. I know it's not a nice thing that when somebody passes away, it's always a quite heartfelt thing that one goes through. But our wishes are with the family, and you know, she was a good councillor and she will be missed, and a good friend. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pandar. Councillor Lawson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't know Kath terribly well and didn't work with her that often. When I first arrived at council, she was already quite senior. The thing I remember about Kath was her ability to correct me with good grace and kindness, which she did a couple of times. I think it's a mark of the lady that even during her long illness, she was interested in council, and so more than once on the election floor as well, always had a good word and a smile to say. So she will be missed by this council, and this group extends its condolences and its best wishes to the family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor David Hall, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to associate myself and my group with those comments that have already been made, I found Kath to be a very open and hard-working person, and her commitment to her duties at this council was second to none. So I was very sorry to hear of her passing, and we send our sympathies and those from the group to her family.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Burke, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got to know Kath when she was Cabinet Member and I was the lead member for Children's Scrutiny. She was lovely as a person. She was just a lovely person, lovely, genuine, down-to-earth person. She was fully committed to the work she did. She was determined in what she did, and she really cared and passionate. They were a good team, herself and Peter O'Neill. The two of them together, they worked together, they worked really well, and they did an awful lot of good, and they cared, and that was something that really stuck out. Very approachable and always helpful. Turned up to everything and really gave it her all. So she will be missed, and I will remember the things she said to me, the words of advice, and that will stick with me as well. So, again, pass on our condolences to her family.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Uppal, please.
Thank you. I just want to echo what everyone said here today. I've known Kath for a very long time. I first got to know her about 16 years ago when I first did some work experience with Annie Smith, and I met her there for the first time. And they both encouraged me to join the party. And since then, she's been a mentor to me, to Amanda and to James, and we'll miss her dearly.
Thank you, Councillor Uppal. Thank you very much for people's kind comments. Kath was a lovely lady and will be very sadly missed, and our thoughts with the family. I was supposed to be having the privilege this evening of presenting Councillor Christine Iredale with her mayoral yearbook, but unfortunately Christine is poorly. So we will be doing that at the next full council meeting. And now I'd like to take the opportunity to congratulate Hanging Eaton Cricket Club on a fantastic season so far, and wish them all the best for the weekend when they represent Kirklees and Yorkshire in the National T20 Finals Day. They have also just become the first club ever to hold both Yorkshire Club trophies at the same time. They're a fantastic club, and I'm sure everyone in the council will support me in wishing them the best of luck for the national finals. Thank you. Announcements by the Chief Executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two announcements tonight, members. The first is to inform you all that Councillor Billy Jewett has resigned as a councillor due to ill health, and I'm sure you would all want to wish him the very best for the future. The second is I'd also like to confirm with members that after an external recruitment process, Eamon Croston has been named as the Service Director for Finance and the Council's 151 officer.
Thank you. Item 2, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence, please? Councillor Sokil.
Madam Mayor, I got apology from Councillor Habiban Yaman and Councillor Golfam Asif. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Hall, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Sims, Councillor Watson and Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Councillor Burke, please.
Apologies from Councillor Iredale and Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Item 3. I move that the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 11th of July 2018 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Seconded. Thank you. Can we please vote by a show of hands? Thank you. That is carried. Item number 4. Members of any interest should disclose their interests now. Are there any interests to declare? Councillor Hughes, please.
Yeah, I'd like to declare another interest on item 18. I'm a member of the Committee of the Regions at the European Parliament.
Thank you. Councillor Smage, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. An interest on item 9. I'm a board member of K&H. And I have a dispensation.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Councillor Pandor, please.
Item 18, Madam Mayor. I'm a substitute member on the Council of Europe, and it's a personal interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
I'm a member of the Committee of the Regions. Item 18.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a K&H tenant. Item 9.
Thank you. Councillor Scott, please.
A member living in K&H property.
Thank you. Any more interests? Yes. Councillor Munro, please.
Yes, it's in item 15. I'm a member of the Standards Committee.
Thank you. Please can I remind any members who have declared an interest to complete the form and submit to the clerk by the end of the meeting. Thank you. Item 5, petitions from members of the Council. Are there any petitions? No. Thank you. Item 6, to receive deputations or petitions from members of the public. And I believe we have a deputation from Armitage Bridge Village Association, re-traffic congestion. Welcome to the meeting. Please can you introduce yourself and the subject matter of your deputation. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, the survey we've carried out, I believe copies have been circulated to a number of the members. I'm John Lockwood. I'm a retired town planner by profession, but I'm standing in for John Avison, the chair of the Village Association, who is on holiday. We're hoping that in presenting the survey to you, that the Council recognise that a very large volume of through traffic is damaging the village and the quality of life of residents. And we're asking the Council to work with us to find a solution to the rat run through the village. The traffic survey came about because villagers were becoming increasingly alarmed at the large number of vehicles passing through. And Armitage Road in the middle is very narrow, and it's the residential heart of the village. So the survey that's been undertaken involved 19 people volunteering to sit outside in the street for 7 days between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. The hours were spread throughout the month so that it was getting typical days, not just one day when there might have been a congestion problem, say at Lockwood, that built the traffic up. When the results were collated, we were staggered by the numbers. Over 14,500 vehicles recorded passing through the village. Armitage Road, in the heart of the village, is only 4.5 metres wide, and in the footway, 1.4 at its maximum. And because of the narrow carriageway, when vehicles meet, going in two directions, one has to mount the footway. And likewise, cars have to park on the footway because otherwise they get scraped and damaged by passing vehicles. The result is that there's no functioning footway. Life's very difficult for pedestrians, particularly the elderly, with mobility aids, and there's a picture in the survey of one of the residents. Those with children in pushchairs, I think the last page of your photograph shows a man with a child in a pushchair, disabled in wheelchairs, and it's certainly a dangerous street for children. For those not familiar with the village, the photos at the end of the report, there are 20 photos, clearly show the problem we face. The figure of 14,000 vehicles is difficult to comprehend. What it means is that at peak periods, cars are entering the street every 12 seconds. And if you're walking from one end of the street to another, you're having to contend with vehicles in two directions continuously for the whole of that time. But in addition, the survey recorded over 150 HGVs trying to get through the village. I say trying because often the articulated vehicle come down to the corner and then realise they can't get out. I personally had to escort vehicles reversing back up and out onto Meltham Road. And the speed vehicles come down one day, there'll be a serious accident there. So the 7.5-tonne restriction that was put in place by the council a number of years ago is totally ineffective. Sat-navs are directing lorries through the village. And again, see the photos in the survey. The low loader with the construction vehicle on, well, it speaks for itself. Highway engineers will say there's no fatalities, no serious injuries, therefore the criteria aren't there for any work to be done. What we're saying is we're asking the council to recognise the severity of the problem and the quality of life in the village and the danger to people who live there. And we're asking if the council is willing to work with the village to see if life can be improved for people living in Armitage Bridge. And we'd welcome if the councillors are willing to come and have a look for them to visit. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for your deputation and thank you for the hours you've put into gathering all that information as well. Very impressive. The photos, they are going round, but we'll also make sure that they're emailed out to all members as well so they can have a proper look at them and take time over looking at them. Can I ask the Cabinet Member, Councillor Mather, to respond, please? Thank you.
Thank you for this deputation. I did receive the photographs. I did have a look. I have spoken to the officers. I do think it would be useful for me to come out with the officers and to speak to yourselves. I will ask our officers to look at the situation again and take your survey through to local issues, which is a Cabinet Committee, for further considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Thank you again for attending and presenting your deputation. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I don't believe there is another deputation this evening. Petitions. Are there any petitions? No petitions. Thank you. Moving on, item 7, questions by members of the public. Are there any questions by members of the public? No? No questions. Thank you. Item 8, to receive for information the minutes of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. There are quite a number of meetings, obviously, because full council finished early last time due to a particular football match. So that's where there are several lots of minutes. And these minutes are for noting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes? Councillor Bolt, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure, colleagues, as you said, there are a lot of minutes. I think in total there are some 70 pages of minutes from West Yorkshire Combined Authority. These deal with many big investments. You virtually flick open any page and one will see the amount of money that the Combined Authority is investing. What I'm concerned about, having read through this, is that in those 70 pages, apart from the attendance at meetings, there seems to be scant mention of Kirklees or any of its communities benefiting from any of this investment. In responding, could somebody tell us, for example, if we look at Rail Park and Ride, where benefit is at? If we look at flood alleviation, which of the areas of Kirklees, such as my own ward of Murfield, where business has suffered multi-million-pound losses, is there any benefit to be coming from this investment in that? And I'm sure colleagues can flick any page, page 73, Wakefield City Centre, South Eastern Gateway, masses of investment, Leeds, Bradford. So where is the reference and investment to Kirklees, and what are our members doing to bring an equal opportunity and equal investment to Kirklees and its villages?
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Pando, do you want to respond to each individual member or all at the end? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'm surprised that Councillor Bolt has just referred to the Combined Authority as the main body, because there are other committees underneath that, and Councillor Bolt will also know that he's actually one of the leads in the Transport Committee. So if he doesn't know how much investment is coming in Kirklees, God help us, Madam Mayor. But having said that, I will remind him of the few initiatives that are actually in the pipeline. We've actually got investment that are taking place on the Huddersfield to Dewsbury corridor under the housing plan. We've also got big schemes that are taking place on Wakefield Road, and we've also managed to get a lot of investment through the newly created Leeds City Region combined pool. So it worries me, because I should be asking a question at mine. If you don't know what your committee is doing for Kirklees, then what's the point of you taking that allowance, right, and being on that committee? But believe me, Madam Mayor, we are doing a lot of stuff. All the detail isn't in here, but the first thing he mentioned was Murfield, and there is a lot of investment that's going on in Murfield. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ponder. Do you want to press your button, please? Thank you.
This morning I was looking at a 10 million investment in the university, which had come from the Combined Authority. The development work is already starting on the A629. That's a £149 million investment between Calderdale and Kirklees. There are numerous other developments. There's a reference in the papers to 77 million at Cooper Bridge. That's coming from the Combined Authority. And you can go on and on. The fact that something, the Kirklees, doesn't appear in a particular set of minutes doesn't mean to say nothing's happening. And Councillor Bolt knows that well.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Councillor Walker, please.
Yeah, it wasn't my original intention to respond to Councillor Bolt, but it's an happy accident that I can do. One of the things that he mentioned on page 10 is the mention of the Natural Flood Management Programme, which is affecting the whole of the Upper Air Basin. There's a £1.7 million project. I've been involved in that as part of a group working across West Yorkshire with the Environment Agency. Happy to report that we are getting about £400,000 to £500,000 of that money spent in Kirklees, plus more than that, over £500,000, which is coming in from the Woodland Trust. The work on this project, certainly most of the work in Calderdale and the work in Kirklees, the background work put in this programme together has been actually undertaken by one of our Kirklees officers. And the project, our part of it, is going to be in the Westenden Valley. And it's looking at slowing the flow of water from the Westenden Valley. It's also a broader project looking at improving the quality of the moorland. So we're also working in conjunction with projects like Moors for the Future and the Peak District National Park. There is a document which came out yesterday outlining the whole strategy for this in the South Pennine moorland areas. So we are benefiting a lot from this, and it will have a positive impact, hopefully, for Murfield, because it should slow down the flow of water, which will reach Murfield as the water from the Colne flows down into the Calder through Murfield, Dewsbury and beyond. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Bolt, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to seek clarity on what Councillor Pandor said. He mentioned the Transport Committee, and probably the Chief Executive can enlighten members for those who don't know. But the remit of the Transport Committee is directed by the leaders and the Investment Committee. They decide where the money is being spent, and it trickles down under their auspices to how it gets spent. So the influence and remit is very much minimal. If the leaders don't say spend it on this, then the Transport Committee, which our Deputy Chair is Councillor Firth here, a Labour member, as is the majority, if the Transport Committee don't then support that in the way that it's equitably, then saying that because a member is in effect on a subcommittee, Councillor Pandor, is a bit fatuous. So can we have confirmation that the actual direction of spend is by the leaders of the Combined Authority and by the Investment Committee?
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Sheard, please.
Just to be fair to Councillor Pandor, he didn't suggest he didn't mention at all about who makes the decisions. He mentioned about who was taking notice of what was going on when they sat there. So Councillor Bolt is sat there, and he claimed that he didn't know what was going on. So it's not about what the structure is; it's what attention Councillor Bolt is paying when he's picking up his allowance.
For my first explanation, I was referring to these minutes in front of us, Madam Mayor, which are not the Transport Committee. And unlike when members are saying just because something doesn't appear on a set of minutes, as you rightly said at the start, these minutes go from February of this year. So it's not just Kirklees isn't mentioned in one set of minutes. There are months of minutes which Kirklees isn't mentioned in, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Light, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just thank Councillor Walker for his helpful comments about the investment by the government through the Environment Agency into flood defence in the Colne Valley. I think that's really important. And I think it's really helpful that he's actually highlighted that to Council, not only because it's good news, because it's government investment in Kirklees, but also because I think it actually brings in to a discussion into an area that we ought to be talking about as a Council, which is what is our flood defence strategy and how can the Combined Authority help that. My worry is, all the water ends up running in one direction and actually does end up in Dewsbury and Murfield from the different rivers that run through Kirklees and Calderdale. And if you look at the example, this is why I think it's really important that we need to talk about and we need to actually look at whether our strategy can be able to cope with things for the future. Because Mythen Road was flooded last year. We all know about that. But actually, I remember looking at when the Environment Agency was doing the Todmanon scheme and some other work down the Calder Valley, the big concern was what happens to Mythen Road. And actually, the reality was it got flooded because water was pushed along on the river from Todmanon to Mythen Road. My worry is the investment that the Combined Authority and the Environment Agency are doing, rightly so, is putting investment into the Upper Calder Valley to save Mythen Road from the flooding it's gone through in the past. That actually means the water will run faster down the rivers, down the River Calder, and the next weak point is actually Murfield and Dewsbury. And if you can remember, there was some quite bad flooding a few years ago in Ravensthorpe, which affected a number of our residents. And my fear is where the next weak spot on that watercourse. And I think actually if you look at
what Councillor Walker has talked about. That means the water will come down the colne a little bit faster if those flood defences, or could do, unless it's slowing the flow, which is good news. I don't know the detail. But the thing is, I think we probably need to ask our representatives to actually prioritise flood defences for Murfield and Dewsbury and Ravensthorpe, because I have a big worry. And actually, the next time we see big flooding in Kirklees, that's what it will be.
Thank you, Councillor Light. Councillor Lawson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a general comment, followed by a bit of a query on one of the items here. The general comment is, I think what's highlighted by all four of these sets of minutes coming to Council at once is just how kind of impenetrable they are all together as a bunch. So there's something to be said about how do we, I mean, there's no hyperlinks. We can't get to the hyperlinks here. So how do we get a summary? How do we get something other than just this kind of impenetrable mass that we've got in front of us? It's quite swampish, do you know what I mean? What I would highlight is item 93, which is the one about the European Structural and Investment Funds, and the SUDS, the Sustainable Urban Development. It talks there about kind of a recalibration, if you will. I don't think it uses that word, but it talks about a recalibration of the budget and about informing people of their success in their projects. Now, what I can't understand from these minutes here, and I've not sat on West Yorkshire Combined Authority yet because I'm a deputy, what I can't understand is, does that mean that there are projects in this region that will not receive funding because of the loss of European funding?
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Obviously, the World Cup's got a little bit of answering to do for us, but cutting the last meeting short. Councillor Pandor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the last point Councillor Lawson mentioned about the minutes being impenetrable, they are, I agree. And one of the other things I've actually seen in these minutes, and I've actually raised it in the meetings, that they actually talk about an overview too much. The detail isn't there. So one of the things that we need to actually look at as the full council, and I will take this back, is how do we actually keep our members informed, especially on the back of the devolution agenda, because there's some big questions that we will be asking, and it's great that we actually put in these bids and these ideas forward to actually get more regional government and more devolution of powers and money. But rather than getting tit for tat, I think there's some serious questions that we need to actually ask for the council. That how do we actually get the right investment in Kirklees, and what do we then do in terms of making sure that the accountability is correct, not just to the council chamber, but back to our communities, to make sure that we actually show value for money and how our money is being spent. They're quite valuable things to actually talk and take back. On another point, Madam Mayor, in May I started to chair the Inclusive Growth and Public Policy Panel. One of the things I will do in that, to make sure that the other panels and the Combined Authority actually takes serious note of, is to actually get mechanisms in place to actually feed back to local councils. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Councillor Shade, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I welcome this debate about the flooding because I think it's extremely serious. I can't remember we discussed it before in this chamber, Robert, and I think it is a serious issue. I used to be the member on the the Yorkshire Flood and Coastal Defence Committee. I think Councillor Donovan placed me, and I think Councillor Sims has been on as well. But I was there when the coalition government cut the funding by, I think it was by 80% for the flood and coastal, for the flood defence schemes under the coalition when they came in. And all the schemes were knocked out. But the criteria for which schemes went ahead was also set by central government. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, they decided what the criteria were, and that's what decided where the funding went. But I think Councillor Light knows, and I welcome the government, the funding that's coming into things, that a lot of the thinking now is saying is that the best way to stop flooding is to keep the water on the moors. So the scheme that we've been talked about was about keeping the water on the moors. So if it's kept on the moors, it won't get to it won't get to Murfield and Dewsbury. Because remember, the water from Murfield and Dewsbury comes through the Calder and the Home. They come from the moors on both sides. So all the work, even in Coldale work, is stopping water getting into Dewsbury and in a flood. So, and I mean that method of looking at how you defend it is one that has been accepted nationally. And it started in North Yorkshire, I think, in Pickering, with a scheme that was done privately about holding water on the moors rather than putting it into rivers. So this idea of trying to make, I mean, you're right, because the past idea was to make the rivers to flow quicker, which only passed the thing down to the next town. And that used to be the old scheme. But as I think you're fully aware that the new thinking now is you try and hold the water and make it come in. And I welcome the scheme. It is a massive scheme that has taken a lot of planning in conjunction with Environment Agency, Yorkshire Water and many bodies. And I think that and I think there are other advantages to it. Because I understand there's a lot of planting, and to me, for a lot of planting, it gets rid of a lot of sheep. And that is a great advantage, to get rid of the sheep.
Lots of mummies of poor sheep there. Moving swiftly on, Councillor Walker, please.
Right, Councillor Sheard has sort of made quite a number of the points I was going to make about the benefits of this scheme and how it will actually slow down the water, which will be to the benefit of communities like Mirfield. Just a few other points. I don't want to steal the thunder of Councillor Turner for a later item, but there has been a very extensive discussion of flood strategy at the Overview Scrutiny and Management Committee. And one of the things that came out of that was councillors showed a lot of interest in what's happening with an actual flood management strategy, and we did request that when it comes back to the committee again, that we have more detail so that we can look at the whole strategy for the whole of Kirklees. Points that David made about slowing the water down. Lots of benefits from this. One of the big damaging factors from floods can be when you get flood water mixing with sewerage. And they claim that if you can slow the water down for just 20 minutes, you can massively diminish that. And that then has a big impact on the contamination of the water, which is involved in any flood event, and it makes it much less damaging. So that's just one of the advantages. But the big thing, really, is holding the water back. Another benefit is, hopefully, to diminish the likelihood of the kind of wildfire events that we've had on Saddleworth Moor over the last couple of months. It would just look, really, that the wind was blowing in the right direction for us, that fire didn't spread over into Kirklees. It could easily have done that. If you can replenish the sphagnum moss upon the hills, if you can build up more pools and things like that on the moorland, the whole moorland becomes wetter, and it's much less likely to catch fire in the way it has done this summer. So there are all sorts of benefits from this, and I think it's very commendable, really, that we as a council are at the forefront of the work that's happening, and we're working very closely in partnership with people like the Environment Agency, Yorkshire Water, the National Trust, Woodland Trust and so on. And I hope that we can continue to build on the good work that we've done so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any more comments or questions on that item? Thank you. Item 9, page 81, Kirklees Housing Strategy 2018-2023. Councillor Scott, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to present the Kirklees Housing Strategy. Kirklees Housing Strategy expired in 2017. Well, whilst this is not a statutory obligation of the Council to have one, this Council sees it as crucial to have a strategic plan for how the Council will continue to address its housing needs across Kirklees and for its residents. There is a housing challenge facing Kirklees. This Council cannot deal with this alone. We need to be innovative, work with partners, support others in helping us to achieve our housing needs. The 5-year housing strategy for 2018 to 2023 comes before you today for adoption. The compilation of this report has required us working collaboratively on a strategy with a wide range of internal and external partners and stakeholders. This strategy highlights the Council's key issues, challenges and ambitions We have set them under 3 priority headings. So number 1 was the housing need. This is to meet a wide range of diverse housing needs, which includes specialist housing, supported housing, homelessness, and also looking at our own housing. Prioritising our vulnerable people with the prevention and early intervention, because that is the right thing to do to support them in their own households. We will enable people to live as independently as possible. So the second one was housing quality. We want to make the best of use of our existing housing supply across all tenures and our homes in Kirklees, and to support the good health and well-being whilst driving up the quality and standards and safety in these properties. And the third one was housing growth. This enables people to develop a wide range of homes to deliver on our housing growth, and this is a long-term supply of the market and affordable housing. We made an announcement in 2018, well, the Deputy Leader at the time did at MIPI, that we would build 10,000 homes across the district by 2023. That's over 1,000 homes of these will be built on the Council's own land. The housing delivery plan has been prepared as part of the evidence base for the housing strategy. The purpose of this housing delivery plan is to guide future investment and recognise our market conditions. There will be a delivery and monitoring review which will be reported back to Cabinet or Council on an annual basis to give you all the progress of where we're at. I will highlight again that this council has 23,000 council properties, and we only cover 13% of the market. And our provision at the moment, we can't provide it all. We've got 13,000 applications. It's rising every week, and we need to work more innovatively with others. We need to build homes for our families and for the people across Kirklees. We do mean business. 10,000 homes by 2023. I know this is bold and ambitious because it means doubling the rate of supply, 50 sites active at any given year. Cabinet have approved the land programme of 1,000 homes, and the first package of 8 sites will be on your tender for the small, affordable housing sites, and this is for 150 to 160 units. So I'd just like to say I'd like you to support, members to support this strategy, and I'm keen to hear your input.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Is that seconded? Councillor McBride.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I totally endorse everything that Councillor Scott says. This strategy is most welcome and opportune. It exploits the opportunity of having an adequate land supply and an approved local plan, which estimates and responds to the needs for 31,000 houses in the next 15 years. Additionally, it ensures that these units will be located throughout the borough, meeting differential local needs. So we can address the issues of affordable housing as well as that for extra care accommodation. Most importantly, it ensures we can deliver on our planning using our own land as part of the total mix. It puts us in a strong position to work with the private sector to invest the necessary resources to meet a genuine need. Because of the local plan, we're able to demonstrate adequate infrastructure investment to release housing opportunities. To deliver the objectives of the strategy, we'll work with partners in the private sector, investors and developers, social enterprise partners, government agencies and our own delivery agents, KCA and K&H. It's only by bringing these forces together we can meet our targets. We'll also guide and support private landlords to ensure provision is properly maintained, energy efficient and meets adequate standards. This strategy and delivery plan demonstrates what local authorities can do using their own resources and ingenuity to fix what Mrs May has described as a broken housing market. I recommend this report.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Any comments on this matter? Councillor Cooper, please.
Thanks for the report. It was an interesting read, and a few observations in it. Empty homes, that's what you'd sort of expect. It's the sort of standard churn that we'd expect in terms of empty homes in a housing strategy. We don't seem to have more empty homes than many other places. We seem to be a pretty run-of-the-mill council in that way, and so not many concerns there, I wouldn't have thought. One of the things I've been talking about for a number of years now, and trying to get some progress on, is the Passive House Standard, which is a way of us actually getting energy-efficient homes, which have 10% the energy demand of a normal home, and that will put about £1,000 a year back into the local economy, which doesn't go to energy companies. So I'll continue to talk about that, and I know there are certain people who've got concerns, which we'll talk about. One of the real things that I think was missing in this plan was any real statement on the right to buy. The right to buy is diminishing our social housing stock. It's a real threat to people on low incomes, people who need housing. It's diminishing the availability of affordable homes. And I think it would be really good if this council made a statement, particularly a Labour-led council, that the right to buy doesn't make sense. It's a nonsensical policy, and I would, I'd like to see the Labour Party actually saying something stronger on that. And it's something that certainly the Green Party feel pretty strongly about too. But I want to focus on the issue of fuel poverty, and there's quite a lot in this report to look at on that sort of terms. And on page 16, there's this section on affordability of housing. It talks all about rents, and it talks about mortgages, and it talks about all those sort of things. But of course, one element of affordability is how much it actually costs to live in a home. How much your fuel costs, how much you have to spend on energy to actually live there. That can be £1,000 a year. And that's not actually included within the element of affordability, and really should be there. But it's made up for later on. We get to page 18, and there's a whole section on fuel poverty. And it's there. Although there have been modest decrease in fuel poverty, this remains a significant challenge for large numbers of people in Kirklees. Fuel poverty levels are higher than the regional national averages. And there's loads of information there about how important an issue fuel poverty is in Kirklees. So that's encouraging, you would have thought. So there's a recognition of the concern. And at page 27, it links health and energy efficiency. And it again points out the importance of it. We're already working closely across the health and social care sectors to reduce health inequalities that arise from poor housing conditions. For example, we're using housing evidence to inform our strategic responses in order to deal with homes affected by damp, cold and hazards from risks and falls. So, linking it with health. Good, that's all very good. Where to get to next? And then we have the action plan. So they've done the strategy, they've looked at the strategy, and then, after saying how important energy efficiency is, saying how important the issue is, we get to what's actually going to happen. So here it is, page 41. 2018-19, target of 75 homes to be improved. 75 homes. This is a huge and important issue. And there's 75 homes that are going to be improved, and those are generally going to be improved by putting additional central heating systems in, not actually improving the energy efficiency of those homes as such, but actually putting a central heating system. Good thing to do, but really looking at the problem through the long end of the telescope. So when you look at the seriousness of the problems we have, we're doing not an awful lot about them. So what should we do? I'm not going to say that millions and millions that don't exist ought to be spent, but I think we should be upfront about the problems that we face, that those problems are real and that we are not going to actually be able to deal with them, that government does have a role. And when I look down the list of partners in the action plan,
30 seconds, Councillor Cooper.
The partner that is missing is central government. Wouldn't it be great if we had a partner in central government working with us to deliver this strategy, that was a partner, a genuine partner, that really cared about the issues that we're highlighting here, that recognised that the local government are the ones who are closest to the ground that can actually deal with these problems, to deal with these concerns? Well, they don't. But we need to be saying it in the strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to start by welcoming the vision set out in this report and the acknowledgement that a partnership approach is needed to deliver the volume and type of houses that are needed by our residents. I note that the vision talks about the need for pace, and this is something that's been sadly lacking in tackling housing needs in this council. And I will be watching closely to see if the reality aligns with the ambitious plans outlined, and whether this administration is capable of proceeding at pace and not trying to micromanage. I note the commitment in this document to an annual review, but actually, given the urgency of addressing the housing issues, I would have thought something more regular was required, and I would hope that the performance of this plan is scrutinised by the Economy and Neighbourhoods scrutiny panel, perhaps on a quarterly basis. I think saying we'll just look at it once a year isn't really sufficient if we really are to move at pace. I'm disappointed to note that in considering the unique positioning of Kirklees at the heart of the Northern Powerhouse, we once again seem to neglect to look south. On page 9, we talk about east and west, but we should also be considering Sheffield as a major city alongside Leeds and Manchester, and recognising that this is also a source of employment opportunities for our residents, and as I say, positioning ourselves at the centre of a triangle, which is much more powerful message to take out to would-be investors and developers that we're at the centre of those three major cities. So I think just talking continually about east-west is neglecting an opportunity there. I'd also like to pick up on page 15. It mentions that connectivity by rail in Kirklees is a relative strength. Well, I think that would come as a surprise somewhat, certainly my residents. And whilst it might be a strength, again, east and west, we have nothing north and south. And also there's no mention of the M1, which again connects virtually with our district. And again, we have the same thing. This council seems to be one-eyed. We only look east-west. We don't look north-south. And the whole of South Huddersfield, in a sense, is neglected in that respect. I don't think it's intentional, but until we start focusing on this, we're going to continually miss some opportunities. I do, however, welcome the commitment contained in this strategy to adopt the housing first approach to homelessness, which is a Conservative policy, which has been shown to work elsewhere, addressing homelessness among some of the most difficult to help individuals. I'm very, very supportive of the Council moving in this direction. I also welcome the comments regarding plans to look at innovative off-site manufacturing solutions. It's a bit of a mouthful. I think we're talking about the 21st century version of prefabs. But note that whilst this is a priority outcome, we seem a little light on actual detail. We talk about a design competition, but I worry that we need to put a bit more of a firmer commitment about what and when. Otherwise, all this becomes is some nice words in a strategy document. I like the fact that we have an action plan, but this seems, again, too light on actual detail and firm commitments. Where are the dates by when we intend to achieve these actions? Without firm dates and commitments, they remain little more than aspirations and nice words. Take, for example, our big commitment to 10,000 homes by 2023. Surely we should have a breakdown of this, of how this work looks on a quarterly basis, and be reporting against that, so we can see whether we are delivering to our commitment or we're not. That, sadly, is lacking. As I say, I welcome this document and welcome this strategy as a starting point for a conversation, but much more detail is needed in terms of firm commitments, which should be there in the plans that sit behind this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Smage, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor McBride actually answered one of my questions when he mentioned KCA, because one of the partners that we have for the Excellent Homes for Life I found mentioned in the strategy, but KCA I didn't find them mentioned, and as they are a key partner in Kirklees, I would have thought that that should have been there. The health aspect of housing is in the report, and that is to be welcomed. But the well-being side is quite silent, and the well-being work, the intervention and prevention well-being, then helps people to live well for longer and not get into the health and social care system for that longer space of time. And so I think the well-being aspect of this strategy needs to be increased as well. Your wellness approach includes being active. And being active, you have to have the environment to be active in. And I think a housing strategy should reflect the environment and air quality, etc., that is needed for well-being. Can I agree with Councillor Taylor's comments on the homelessness work? I think that's very important. But on affordable housing, you have said that affordable housing, you need to address the affordable housing. Yes. I asked for some figures on affordable housing because I know that we have to complete an annual monitoring report. So I thought that the figures would be readily available. It's taken a little while to get to me, so apologies if I am reading direct the figures. But in 13-14, we managed to complete 320 affordable homes. In 16-17, that had gone down to 121. And in 17-18, it's predicted to be 100. So if we're trying to address affordable housing issues, then what is the work that we are doing to try and ensure that there is more of a supply? And what schemes are in the pipeline, affordable housing schemes are in the pipeline, because you need a long pipeline for schemes in this, other than what's mentioned in the report, because quite clearly we need quite a lot of work on the affordable housing side. I looked at one planning application from 2016, I think it was, and with a development of over 100 homes, we got 13 affordable houses, which was just 10%. And the aim is around 20% for development of that size. And so I think the Cabinet needs to look at where this is going wrong. I also noticed that on page 33, we say we are working closely with, we plan, and the word plan is there, we plan to work closely with the Department of Transport and the Combined Authority to maximise the benefits for our district on the Transpennine upgrade, a £3 billion Transpennine upgrade. Now, can I ask, surely this should be, because of the importance of this, surely this should be, we are working closely. Can you clarify this, please? Because surely this strategy should say, we are working. Because this upgrade to that line is so important for our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Councillor Lawson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So today we're being asked to discuss the housing strategy for the next 5 years till 2023. It sounds like a long time, but it isn't, not in housing terms. For example, the relatively modest project at Ashbrow has taken 5 years to get to its current point. I'm not sure what kind of time Councillor Scott and officers had to write this report, but they've covered a lot of ground and there are some real steps forward in quite a few areas, and that's to be acknowledged. The Kirklees quality standard for both social and private rent is a very big plus in my book. It establishes a measurable expectation that evens up the contracts between landlord and tenant. It's something we've called for in the past and we're happy to see it. The development of the SPD, or the supplementary planning document, setting out the quality of new development, I can see that planning officers, councillors and public alike are all going to be glad to know that council have an influence there. I mean, for the guys who have been on committee in this room, how many times have we said, if we can't say no to this development, can we at least have a good one? And that's going to be useful to everybody in the future, I think. Along with these good points is the commitment to homelessness. It's something that the Liberal Democrats are committed to, and it's something that we applaud in this report. I would say, though, that can we invest in the intensive, close support that it would need to be successful? That would have, you'd have to bring that back in. On a more negative note, I'd point to a couple of significant things that are missing from the report, or they appear to be. We've read about working with partners and developers to bring the types of housing we need to the places we need them to be. Now, ideas of what we do to attract developers to that discussion are simply not in here, not that I can see. Neither are the many alternative models of delivering the 1,000 houses promised on Kirklees' own land. If you are still yet to investigate those areas, halfway through year one, what does that do to the timescales that we're talking about? Can we deliver? It shortens our time that we've got. The development represented in this report is huge. It's ambitious. Is it attainable? We're all, I'm asking questions about that here. So if we go back to 2006 and 7, we built just over 2,600 houses in that 1 year. It was for 1 year, over 10 years ago, during a housing boom. It happened quickly and quickly fell away. With this scale of development, we would hope to see a strategy for the amenities that we would want for our residents and that we would help to need to attract them to the housing that we build for them. Without this accompanying strategy, we risk falling into the trap of that rapid, sporadic development, shortchanging the residents and putting increasing pressures on public communities, clean air and travel infrastructure. Building social housing for rent doesn't actually appear by name in the action plan. Now, I hope that's an oversight. I would ask why not. It doesn't appear in the housing need or the quality or growth plans. If not, if it's not an oversight, it's an extraordinary omission. Working on figures from Shelter and Crisis, the Liberal Democrats are hoping to push for a sixth of all council-built houses to be built for social rent, social rent for social rent. That would equate to about 300 of the 1,000 houses that we're working on here. So I'd just like to point that out. So let's hear about what we're going to do to invest to achieve the delivery on these priorities. And if we're going to deal with private developers, let's hear about what commitments they would need to undertake and how we would make sure that they stick to them. I'll finish there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Armour, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a large and, one hopes, comprehensive report. Necessarily, I'm only able to respond to a small section of it within the time constraints. So it is that I draw attention to the key issue of demographic change, leading to an increased need of specialised housing for vulnerable groups. And also the graphic which states that the number of residents aged 65 plus is forecast to grow by 40% up to 2031. And these appear in the summary to the report. Once upon a time in Kirklees, we had a policy of providing dedicated sections of social housing for the exclusive use of people aged over 55-60. Over time, ideas changed, and we developed an open age policy, which has led to some areas designed for older people, now housing a mix of people, including in some cases families with young children. This change came about for the perfectly reasonable purpose of ensuring that social housing was fully utilised. But now, with the demographic changes which this report highlights, I think it is time to revisit the open age policy. The report itself notes a significant shortage of housing suitable for older people. It is time for us to revert to a policy in which accommodation designed for older people is again reserved for those for whom it was designed. In common, I suspect, with many members here, I have received complaints from older people in my ward
about perceived problems arising from housing young adults, often their children, and developments intended for older people. At the same time, I truly believe that in many cases, these housing types are not at all suitable for the needs of young children. So they do not, and the quote is from the report, have the best start in life. We're not giving children the best start in life by housing them in inappropriate housing. In the event, we do not do the best for any sector of the population by maintaining this open age policy. The well-meaning but mistaken changes should be reversed, I suggest, and I see nothing in this report to address that issue. I would also like to mention what I see as a foreign national policy, but it is endorsed within the report, and that refers to the provision of lifetime housing. Now, the idea that houses should remain accessible whilst the physical abilities of residents may change over time is laudable. It's a very good idea. It's very praiseworthy. However, it ignores a crucial fact of life. As we age, our housing needs often change fundamentally. Children grow into adulthood and fly the nest, whilst their parents in older age then face the challenge of finding themselves in a property which is too big for their needs. If we take policy steps to ensure that there is a sufficient supply of smaller housing designed for older people, we automatically free up larger family homes for growing families. All too often, the idea of a lifetime house is a myth. Better to provide a better mix of housing types, I would suggest. We do hear about provision within planning conditions for affordable homes, for starter homes. We also need provision, I suggest, for what I tend to think of as finisher homes, but you might also think as last move homes. And I do think we need to make these provisions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Councillor Pandor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Cooper mentioned a few interesting things, Madam Mayor. Basically, the lack of national housing strategy, housing policy. For example, rough sleepers, Madam Mayor. We see numbers increasing in all our towns and in our own town as well. Again, you know, that's a direct impact of the cuts that we've had to make. Lack of affordable housing. I think the affordable housing argument has moved on, Madam Mayor. People who are working, people who are graduates, people who have got good jobs can't afford a house. You know, so, you know, a lot of people know younger people who are actually working on very good salaries, but they cannot get the foot in the housing ladder. Now, that really worries me. Now, again, right, yeah, I think government needs to take some responsibility in actually making sure that something happens. It kickstarts that part of the housing strategy. Sustainable housing. In the past, we've had national policies around making sure that we develop sustainable housing strategies at a local level. I'll come on to that in a minute in terms of what we're doing and what our plans are. But again, there should be something that nationally governments do to actually make sure that it actually incentivises local government. And the private rental sector, Madam Mayor, it's broken. A lot of the constituents that come to me with private rental problems, it's about the housing structure, housing maintenance, young families living in such bad conditions that they're actually suffering with asthma, overcrowding, but we can't house them because there is no housing, Madam Mayor. The housing list carries on growing and our hands are tied, Madam Mayor, but we are trying our best. And lifetime homes. There was a review, Barker review, that took place some time ago under Gordon Brown, and all this was actually, you know, highlighted. But suddenly, that came to a standstill, and I think the focus actually moved on. But we need to actually start looking after our own residents, our own people, and the only way we can do that is actually get some sort of national steer. On a positive note, Madam Mayor, my visit to China, I actually learnt quite a lot of things. When I was in Jindal, there's a company that's based in Leeds called Doha. They're a company in China. Now, they've actually developed a big warehouse that actually meets Passion standards. They've actually done a lot of work with Germany in terms of how they're developing their housing sustainable programme. and they've actually come up with new initiatives to actually develop passive house standards. So I'm prepared to actually have a chat with Andrew afterwards, because I've got some brochures as well. And it sounds quite promising that we can actually start to actually break through that barrier in terms of how do we actually make sure that these new homes are value for money. And if other people like Chinese can actually show us how to do it, then we should be opening our arms. And I'm sure that we'll embrace this with open arms. And I'm sure that the Tories who are sort of sniggering on my right, Madam Mayor, they say that where's your pace gone? But when it comes to housing sites, which we actually approved in this council chamber through the cabinet a few weeks ago, then if you want pace, then get behind that policy. Because, it's one thing saying raise your pace, but then it's another thing when you start jumping up and down saying that we don't want these houses. So they've got to make their mind up, Madam Mayor. But we are up for change, Madam Mayor. We are up for pace. And we've actually learning lessons, not just from other local authorities, but we're actually now increasing the pace in terms of making sure that we actually find out from international partners. And that's where we're at, Madam Mayor. So get behind this housing strategy. We haven't got all the solutions. National government needs to take responsibility as well. But if we actually get together the council, I'm sure we can actually get to where our residents expect us to get, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had actually prepared something to say, but much of what I had to say has already been said by other members. So I'm going to pick out a couple of things, but I think this is one of those issues, actually, where party politics is not really relevant. And we might come from slightly different angles hear me out, because actually, most of us in this room, who wouldn't want to look at homelessness? Who wouldn't agree that homelessness is a bad thing? Who wouldn't think that we need to provide, as a council, decent quality housing stock? So we're all sort of much in the same area. We might have slightly different opinions about, where we go with regards to how we do it, etc. And if the Chinese have got good ideas, then fair enough. I'm not averse to looking at passive house if it's going to work. Ultimately, we all have to think about, how this challenge, because it is a big challenge, and housing is one of the most important things. Actually, there's 69 of us in this chamber when it's fully housing everyone, and there are nearly 500,000 people in Kirklees. So, we're all elected to serve the people of Kirklees, not just our own wards. So, just briefly, yes, the vision reads very, very well, and if I'm critical of the actual document itself in some way, I don't really mean to be. I'm just picking out a few points. So I just feel as though some of the detail may be lacking. So we need something specific, achievable, measurable, something that we can actually look at on maybe not on an annual basis. Maybe Councillor Taylor's right. We need it more on a quarterly basis, maybe on a 6-monthly basis. We need something we can actually look at. A lot of these action plans are quite sort of weak in terms of how we measure how far we're actually achieving what we set out to achieve. Picking out a couple of things about empty properties. It mentions 2,100 empty properties. What state are these properties in? We're talking about compulsory purchase. It mentions support for landlords. What shape will this take? Mentions properties being empty for a long time. Our work is to try and bring these back into use. And how are we going to do that? Obviously, the council tax levy on empty properties over 2 years. But then it goes on to say things like, we will identify and engage with owners of empty properties. How are we going to engage with them? What are we going to do? Use a combination of statutory action in ensuring the property is safe and secure. And then it mentions things about packages of advice and assistance, depending upon the owner and their property. So, it's vague. It's not specific. It's not measurable. It's not something we can really look at. And I'm not intending to criticise. So what I'm saying is that this is a big problem, and we need to be more open and engage with each other about it. Transport infrastructure has been touched on again. Very little in the south of Kirklees. I'm going to speak about Flockton in a while. We've got the North Kirklees Orbital Road. We've got Cooper Bridge Road. What about the issues in my ward on Penistone Road, Kirkburton? What about the issues with the extra building that's going on? And when you have a load more new houses going up at the side of a main road, obviously there are infrastructure requirements. Schools, doctor surgeons, all these things need to be considered. And people have mentioned the private sector basically engaging with the building construction industry. Yes, I agree. But how well are we doing this at the moment? And how many of these Section 106 agreements have actually been diluted. Currently, I used to sit on the planning committee. I know colleagues have spoken to me about this. It's an issue. I did a Google search on Section 106 earlier today, and there's actually people advertising. How do you get out of paying your Section 106 contributions? How do you minimise them? How do you stop paying them? So we need to look at all this sort of stuff. And, if building contractors are putting in to do a big development, and then they're sumping up 6 weeks later saying, I've sort of misread this, I can't really afford to provide this, that and the other. Can I do it for like 10% of that? No, we need to hammer that. And that's my view.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Can I just inform members that there are actually 10 people on the list now wanting to speak, so I am going to close the list. The last person to speak will be Councillor Steve Hall, so please, no more pressings of your buttons. Okay. Councillor Munro, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you for the report which I've read through. I note this strategy highlights the importance of delivering more, better and affordable homes at pace, and to ensure the right mix and type of homes that are affordable, are of a high quality and supported by good infrastructure. My first question is, what is affordable housing? For the purposes of this Council's strategy, is it simply a planning term? Or can it be defined for rental purposes as affordable homes should cost no more than 8% of the average local market rent? Home ownership is more complex again. Or does it mean affordable in terms of ordinary families being able to buy a home? The housing charity Shelter has said that affordable housing should cost no more than 35% of your household income after tax and benefits. 35% of your income for people on very low incomes is difficult to find compared to those who earn more. So what does the strategy mean when it refers to affordable housing? My second question is on the Strategic Housing Market Assessment Report 2016 clearly shows an affordable housing deficit in Kirklees of 1,049 per annum, with a backlog of 6,513 in 2016. The Strategic Policy Main Market Assessment shows just 121 affordable houses were built in 2016-2017, that's across Kirklees, and only 77 in 2017-2018. There are, however, projections of 93, 239 and 588 in the next 3 years. The percentage of affordable homes as a percentage of total bills has fallen from 31% in 2013-2014 to 8.5% in 2017-2018, although this is set to increase to 17% in the next 3 years. The strategy before us refers to 1,000 new homes being built on council-owned land in the next 10 years, with no indication of the type of housing they will be. To meet the affordable housing need, the council needs to prioritise affordable housing on all council-owned sites, since clearly the market and planning department are not delivering these types of houses. Finally, I have noted the original wording that was included on all the council-owned sites in the local plan across Kirklees, and I quote, "This site is owned by Kirklees Council, and as such it could deliver enhanced affordable housing and green infrastructure and offer design and quality that is of a high standard. This has been removed in every case on all the council-owned land in Kirklees. The inspector has requested that it be moved, as such matters will be determined against other relevant planning policies in the local plan at the time when planning applications are made. How then can the council begin to tackle the affordable housing backlog and provide affordable homes for ordinary families, as the strategy before us does not address the problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Councillor Sheard, please.
you, Madam Mayor. This debate has proved the success of this paper, because it's got so many people interested in what is absolutely a massive issue. But I think what it's also done, I think it's demonstrated that that a lot of the members don't understand what the term strategy, because if the size of the document they'd been requesting, it would have been 10 times this, and we wouldn't have had time in a full 3-hour council to debate it. So that I feel the same frustration as Councillor Amer in that we're having to speak on restricted parts of it, and we probably want to speak on much more of it. Can I just point out to Councillor Smith, who's now left the room, but when he was talking about house building, myself and the councillor from Cleckheaton and the councillor from Eppendwike know what house building is, because we're the ones who have had more house building than anywhere else in Kirklees. So all the ones who talk about the pressures should think about Eppendwike and Cleckheaton, who have taken more houses than anywhere else. So I'd just like to say also to Councillor Amer, who again has left the room, I think, that people over 65 are not old. People over 65, people over 70 are not old. But the bit is got wrong about the policy change that we made, and that's a problem of being here a long time. You remember why you changed things. It wasn't that we saw a need to fill houses that we changed the policy. We changed the policy against the wish of nearly every councillor on this council, because we were advised that by law we were breaking the law by discriminating on the basis of age. I think that advice was wrong. I think we should be reviewing it now, and I think we should be taking it. But that's the reason we did it. Not a single member of the council wanted to bring that in. We were forced to do it by our lawyers saying that we're breaking the law. So I think that's a point. Can I just go on to Councillor Cooper's point? And I totally and absolutely agree with him. And can I say up front about politics? I'm totally and absolutely ashamed of the Labour government in the fact that it did not end right to buy. I think it was appalling that they did nothing when they had the chance to end this disgrace of what's actually happening. We've got a situation where many houses in council estates are now privately rented. They're not owned. They're now privately rented at rents higher than council rents. They are not being maintained properly. You look at estates, and the ones that have got problems, and many are private rented with all sorts of people in them. They're destroying our estates. The policy is an absolute and total disaster. Yet we've got a government that is trying to extend this to housing associations. They're trying to extend it to much more. And it's just got to think about the policy the government's got. The policy the government's got about when we talk about what is affordable housing. There is a government definition. Totally and absolutely wrong. It's not affordable, what they call affordable housing. We've got a scheme now that the government sees a priority to help people with an income of £80,000 buying a £600,000 house and helping them to buy. Now, I've got to admit that would not be my priority. If someone could afford a £600,000 house and they were asking for help from the government, tell them to buy a cheaper bloody house and go and live somewhere else. I don't see why, when the people that we've got that are earning nothing like £80,000, are lucky to earn £25,000, can't afford an house of £100,000. Those are the people we should be helping. And I think this comes down to the thing about the definition of affordable housing. When you knock a bit of a discount off the sales price, then that happens for the first person. Then when they sell it, that disappears. It's no longer an affordable house because the price goes up. So I think that the only affordable housing is really housing to rent. And the thing that we've drifted into, that we've not really taken into account, and I think this paper addressed it in some way, we should be spending a lot more time on looking at the private rented sector. There's now more private rented houses in Kirklees than are council houses. Now, there are some good landlords. There are quite a lot, and we've really failed without the good landlords we've got. But there are some bloody bad ones, some atrocious ones. And the government this week, and I've got just to give credit to the government when they're taking action about the fees charged by agents. My daughter was going for a housing association who asked for a £500 deposit before they were assessed whether they could afford the rent, which was non-returnable. So they had to put a £500 deposit down, then be assessed whether they could afford the rent and get the house. So they might not get the house, and if they didn't get the house, the deposit was not returnable. These are the sort of practices going on, and I think that it's right in the paper we should be addressing the private rented sector, but mainly we should be abolishing right to buy instantly.
Thank you, Councillor Sheard. Councillor Andrew Pinnock, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Right, where to start? A lot of points, and a lot of very valuable points have been made already. I right at the beginning of this debate, somebody mentioned the fact that our housing market is broken. Well, it certainly is, from all aspects of it, including the very high prices that you find in London and other big cities, which is an absolute disgrace. Our housing market's being hijacked by wealthy people from overseas. But that's not an issue for this topic. But I think that the housing strategy that we produce could at least offer some suggestions as to how we can move in small steps towards solving the broken housing market. And one of the things that I'm particularly pleased about is that K&H over the years have been working with private landlords to try and ensure decent standards in privately rented housing. Now, they can go only so far with this, and the point that was made by somebody earlier about the government need to be involved in strategies like this is really very apposite, because some of these things require changes in legislation, and the sort of demands that are placed on private landlords in other European countries should be applicable here, so that we don't have the situation that Councillor Shear just outlined, and it will put everybody on the same footing. Another thing, remove the stigma on privately rented housing, or indeed rented housing altogether. Go back 100 years and thousands of people rented houses as a matter of course, and there was no social stigma attached to it. We need to sort that out. I realise you can't do this in this strategy, but other points that have been raised by colleagues, particularly what is affordable housing, any definition of it is unsatisfactory, because unless you're talking about social rents, it's only ever affordable once, unless you use the affordability in perpetuity option, which I'm not surprised to hear some developers are not very keen on, because it means putting a stop on the amount of money that they can earn from it. Right, criticism of the report. It says there is the potential for 1,000 homes on council-owned land. Who will build them? I think that we've got to take a much more active role in dealing with this. Whether it involves setting up our own delivery arm to do this, I don't know, as some other councils have done, and done quite successfully, I think. Now, there are clearly risks in doing that, but I certainly think that it should be considered, because it is one way. We can go on about what we like about what we think ought to go on these sites, but unless the council is behind it, directing what actually happens on those sites, then it's not so good. There are a couple of things which I do question. There's a reference to Junction 26, which is Shane Bar, about improvements there. Well, the latest from the Highways England is that they're not going to do it. I think that could have been made sure in this report.
30 seconds, Councillor Pinnock.
I am about to draw to a close. I do think a lot of good work has gone into this, but we need to do better, I think, is my conclusion.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Murgatroyd, please.
Thanks a lot, Madam Mayor. It's my first time I've spoken here, so hopefully I've pressed all the right buttons and nothing going to go wrong. I just wanted to welcome the emphasis in the strategy on issues around the private rented sector. And I really agree strongly with what Councillor Sheard has been saying about it as a major issue. Now, on page 27 of the strategy, it does point out that in Kirklees we do have a relatively smaller number of private rented sector tenants than some other areas. But I don't think that should obscure the fact that this particular group of citizens actually have a much greater needs and are really important in terms of needs, because it's often poorer people, younger families and more vulnerable people who rent privately. So it was good to see on page 41 of the action plan some important targets and priorities to improve housing quality around health, affordability to keep it warm and so on. But these are obviously tends to focus on physical aspects of housing. I just wanted to highlight another aspect of security, and that is security of tenure and security and freedom from the threat sometimes of harassment by landlords. Because now obviously we're working within a national legal framework, and Kirklees can't actually change that. But I think that over the decades, the odds have been stacked too far against the rights of private tenants. And certainly people have probably seen press reports where tenants have actually faced evictions when they've complained about, quality issues in their housing. And I just want to cite support here from an expert opinion from the gentleman on my left, Councillor Ulla, who works for Thelma Walker MP, and he was confirming that over the last period there's been an increasing number of people who have been contacting the MP's office to complain about this very issue. So clearly it is a genuine one. Now, ultimately, only national legislation, and I have to say a change of government, in my opinion, is going to solve the problem. But in the meantime, clearly Kirklees has to support families and individuals facing problems of harassment and eviction as much as possible, and treat it as seriously as, the physical aspects. And that isn't just the right thing to do, the humane thing to do, protecting some of our most vulnerable residents, but it's also good value for money and common sense, of course, because that is a really good way of preventing homelessness at source. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Murgatroyd. Members, it is now exactly 7 o'clock. I hate to cut the debate because it's a really excellent debate. We're going to have a 20-minute comfort break now and continue where we left off. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, members. So we'll continue with this debate. Next speaker, I've got Councillor Bolt, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Welcome to part 2. Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to see that in this strategy there is some reference to the need for infrastructure improvement. It's something which I'm sure colleagues have always said, that where we get major development, the infrastructure should precede it. But as colleagues have mentioned, what is lacking is something that we can measure and judge upon from this strategy. It's acknowledged that, on page 33 that transport infrastructure is an important part. I'm sure, talking to colleagues, however they travel, transport infrastructure needs a lot of work. But the need for these measures, just pick one. It says there's a £70 to £80 million project at Cooper Bridge. That could be the £77 million bypass. And that will support tackling congestion. A very strong statement. But if colleagues care to remember, the last time we saw a detailed scheme proposed to tackle congestion at Cooper Bridge, it was under the Liberal Democrat administration. That was a £15 million gyratory, which, when we saw the detail, actually increased journey time through the junction and therefore increased congestion and an adverse effect on air quality. And thankfully that was dropped. So these schemes, as yet, they are aspirational. And when the Secretary of State visited Kirklees a while ago, I asked officers for a strategy plan showing all the proposed schemes and was told that we didn't have one at that time, which was shocking. When you get a minister here and you're wanting to show him the proposals for things like the North Kirklees orbital, like the Cooper Bridge, and officers told me that they didn't have that on a strategic map, something I think has now changed. This bypass as well, the £70 to £80 million project, I'm reminded of the words of Councillor McBride responding to residents who petitioned for a Flockton bypass. You can't look at schemes in isolation. You have to look at the impact that they will have on the rest of the network. So, for example, for this scheme, what impact will it have on the B6118, Bellstring, Liley Lane and all its other iterations, which affects both Mirfield, Flockton and the Kirkburton and Dalton wards? We need to see the strategy for that, and we need to be able to measure it. Again, I'm pleased to see talk of the rail infrastructure, and it has been commented before about this concentration on lateral movement east-west, particularly concentrating on better stations for the Transpennine. Now, Madam Mayor, I support the investment in the minor stations that are mentioned here, of Huddersfield, Dewsbury and Batley. But if we look at how our colleagues in Leeds and Wakefield and Bradford are investing, they are making sure that everybody knows for their investment, for business and everything, that they are linked to London. So I look forward to Councillor McBride coming forward with further plans, as the statement he made following the local plan inspector's report, when he said we were going to have a new station for Mirfield and Ravensthorpe. And I look forward to seeing detail of that and how it will link Kirklees better to London. We need to see that better connectivity for our business. The Dewsbury Riverside development is mentioned. Currently, as I'm sure the ward colleagues there will know, that only connects to the Transpennine east-west route. If we want to get those people out of cars, we need to make sure it's connected towards Wakefield and other line, which currently that station doesn't. So the plans for connectivity are to be welcomed, but I look forward to seeing targets, measures of deliverability, outcomes of what they're going to do in terms of traffic reduction, and then we can actually look at the value for money.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Light, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As members will probably appreciate, I've seen one or two housing strategies over the last 30-odd years or so at this council. Some of those haven't done it and actually had a great deal of relevance to key strategic housing issues, and many haven't had a great deal of strategy in them. On balance, this is probably one of the better ones. However, if you actually look at those previous housing strategies and then you look at the issues we face today, they haven't been successful, which is why the crucial thing about this document is not necessarily the strategy and the priorities, it's going to be the delivery of it. And that's where I have got severe concerns, because we have a pretty poor record as a council on delivery. And there are all sorts of reasons about that. But actually, we haven't delivered against the issues in terms of the broad housing issues that our community needs us to do. And you can throw in issues from central government, from outside bodies, if you want. But actually, it doesn't take away from the fact that we, as a council, haven't actually dealt with the issues particularly effectively. So I hope there'll be some reflection on that, because delivery is going to be everything. The fact is we're committing in this document to deliver 10,000 homes over a relatively short period, working with the private sector. Yet, how many are we actually how many homes are being actually built every year at the moment? Not enough. How do we up the game in terms of delivering those? I don't see any detail to actually give me confidence that that will happen. We talk about delivering 1,000 council houses. Well, that's really good. But hang on a minute. 10 years ago, council land, all right, a council land. Well, 10 years ago, as leader, I committed the council to deliver 500 council houses on council land. And actually getting the land for those 500 was like pulling teeth. And you know what the biggest obstacle was? Your predecessors. That's what it was. It was members. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that was the problem. So actually, if the council wants to commit to build 1,000 houses on council land, whoever's putting the bricks down, it's actually we're going to make sure that happens. And how? Because there's no how in this document. And that's what concerns me. So it's the delivery of these issues which I think needs some serious attention from Cabinet. And I would like to see a delivery plan brought back to Council. And quickly, by the end of the year. Because that, to me, is the crucial issue. The other issue I want to focus on is our partners. Now, I remember the debate about 15 years ago when we took a brave decision as a council, not one that I supported, because I was concerned. I was concerned about where it would take us, and was that the right answer? But I'm ready to say now that my concerns were misguided, because the decision we took to set up K&H was a bold one and the right one. It was for two reasons. It was to tap into government money in terms of decent homes and investment, and it was because we were appalling at managing our own council housing stock. We didn't talk much about the latter, but that was the truth. And you know what's happened since? It's actually the amount of stuff that we have to deal with on a housing basis as members has declined hugely because it's been dealt with. It wasn't being dealt with on anything like the scale when we were running managing the housing stock in the 80s and in the 90s. So actually, what I want to know is why, when we have got a very good managing agent in K&H, they are nowhere mentioned as contributing to delivering the key objectives of this document. Surely that is a fundamental flaw. Surely that is a body which is respected nationally, who should actually be contributing to delivering these priorities.
30 seconds, Councillor Light.
Surely they should be delivering to those priorities, and I would hope Cabinet would reconsider that point when they look at the strategy in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Light. Councillor Uppal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll try and be quick. Firstly, I just want to thank everyone involved in the development of the document. I know it will have taken quite a lot of time to put together an expertise, and it's important that we recognise that as well. I know we've talked a lot about delivery, that's really important, but the national context is important. If we look at the national rough sleeping figures from January, we saw that rough sleeping increased by 169% since 2010. And many charities have said that is a catastrophe and a scandal, and they're absolutely right. We have to also look at the choices that a government makes, and that is going to impact on the strategy that we can put together. And we know some of the impacts that we're facing here are because of the direct results that have been made by ministers. So we've got to look at the steep drop in investment for affordable homes, the crude cuts to housing benefit, the reduced funding for homelessness services, and the refusal to help private renters. We also know the impact that universal credit is having on rent arrears. This is a massive issue, and we know a lot of private landlords are reluctant to take on UC claimants because of the inbuilt 5-week minimum delay in receiving the initial payments. The bedroom tax, another sort of ridiculous policy really, has made little difference in freeing up homes for availability. If we look at the Homelessness Reduction Act, again, I think this is a good idea from the government, but there isn't adequate funding to provided to local authorities. So I think they've provided about 77 million, the government, but London councils have said they would need at least 66 million, not leaving very much left over for the rest of us. Given all these issues, I do welcome their strategy. I do think the council are trying to take a partnership approach. I do welcome the link between housing and health, and obviously the work that's been done with the Housing First pilots and the targeted support for our most vulnerable is really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Uppal. Councillor Kendi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will also be brief. I was going to talk about the all-age issue with housing that Councillor Armour mentioned. Councillor Sheard has spoken about that, but I do echo his angst about it, and I don't think there are many ward councillors who haven't seen difficulties with that across Kirklees. One of the other issues, and I think Councillor Armour perhaps hadn't really realised, in terms of he talked about homes for life weren't necessary if there were downsized suitable homes for people. But there are people, and this document doesn't quite address it, I don't think, where there is an also rise in people with very severe and complex physical disabilities from birth. And that's great while they're babies, but as soon as they grow bigger, then we spend a huge amount of money as a council on adaptations to those homes, and wouldn't it be better if we built those homes in the first place as homes for life? The specialist housing for older people, and it puts the ages in, and I'm very insulted by the ages, I have to say. It really, you're absolutely right, people could live in bungalows and suitable flats and so on, until you start to need personal care, and particularly in the rural areas, as some colleagues know too well, the provision of home care is nearly impossible to arrange, and supported housing complexes across Kirklees really does benefit to allow people to continue to live independently and live good lives, but have the care that they need on site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Councillor David Hall, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, just a few points. We'll keep it brief. First of all, to welcome the comments from the Cabinet members about a possible review of the age designation policy. I know. Well, I think Councillor Sheard hinted at it, because this again is contributing to the shortage of older people's accommodation, which, of course, further down the chain when people downsize, hopefully frees family accommodation for those that need it. The second thing I find to be an omission in the document, there isn't an acknowledgement in there that we're already behind with housing completion targets. This local plan is almost a standing start. We've got no build-up of momentum behind it. So I would like to, one of the Cabinet members to give us some concrete proposals, please, as how they think they're going to give it a shot in the arm over the next year or two to make sure we can get those 10,000 completions by 2023. My third point was just to pick up on the point that Councillor Light made. I remember well when we were talking about the design and build of those 500 houses in about 2008, as Cabinet member at the time. And I'd like to know from the Cabinet that since then, since those were commissioned, how many council houses have been built under the successive Labour administrations since 2010? I would expect it's not very many, if it's any at all. So someone might be able to refresh me on that. Just back to the document again, there is much to welcome in it. I'm not sure it goes far enough to support, but because it has several very important omissions. But thank you to those who have put the work in to prepare it.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Stephen Hall, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think if ever I were going to write a book, I'd have to call it Life and Times of the Frustrated Planning Chair. Now, apart from me getting frustrated on planning, I'm sure other colleagues are frustrated, because the way that I see it, whenever we come in here for strategic planning, it's like going into a battle. And that battle is against developers, because developers now are twisting every way that they can to screw councils. And that's 106 agreements, affordable homes, they're coming up with very elaborate schemes of being affordable, as we know from one that we sent back a few weeks ago. We didn't know what they were talking about, officers didn't know what they were talking about, but yet they've come up with this scheme for some affordable homes. No, they're not, so we sent it back and they're looking at it again. We're getting more and more applications which are being backed up by viability studies, and we find some good stuff on there. We found 600,000 not long ago that we got out of a developer.
So that's one thing where it's evened up a little bit because we have information from them, and it's double-checked, make sure that they're not trying to take us for the tatar, but they still come back about abnormals. Well, we've just started digging, and you'll never guess what we've found. They've found asbestos, they've found concrete, they've found a big hole. The digger's disappeared, it's fallen down a pit shaft. All sorts of stuff like that, and we're supposed to sit there and take all this. You could write Monty Python script with some of the stuff what they come out. But yet the poor little lambs, they still end up, you know, with a 20% profit. And we see all that. So we've started now having a bit of a go at them. Affordable homes. This is a load of nonsense. They're only affordable once. It should be, it doesn't matter if they're sold 10 times, they should always be 20% below comparables, what's around them. That way, it is affordable. Right to buy. That should be stopped immediately. It should have been stopped years ago. This is one of the reasons why we're in a mess that we're in. But even to add on to affordable homes, there's some poor sods in our society that can't afford them. And that's people on 0-hour contracts. So they should be stopped also. On right to buy, RSLs, they're in a panic. Why should they build houses that in, say, 5 years' time, people can take it off them under a right to buy? You can't write a business strategy working to those sorts of regulations. That's ridiculous. And the other thing is, I want this strategy to work, but we're only as good as what developers make us. And it's up to developers to deliver these houses. We're passing them, but it's up to developers to start and work with us and deliver houses. And also, on land that we say we want houses on, and a mixture of tenures and a mixture of houses, whether it's bungalows, whether it's small flats, whether it's 4 or 5 bedroom houses, because we do need them in some areas. But it's time that developers did start and work with us a little bit better and stop trying to screw us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall, and thank you all members for your contributions. Right of reply, Councillor Scott, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say this has been a very good debate tonight, talking about housing. And all your contributions are valued because it shows that you do care about our communities and what happens in Kirklees, be it from infrastructure, housing, right the way through. And I'd like to pick up on one of the points that Councillor Smith mentioned. And you did say about the figures and you found it difficult to find them. Well, unfortunately, it's 12 months post-completion before them figures are released. So that's the reason. And Councillor Hall, you did mention about viability and them developers coming back about viability, but it was also part of the drop-offs being because of the starter homes, where developers are not interested in a lot of our affordable housing. So we need a government policy that helps the councils rather than creating loopholes for developers. And it would be helpful if the government would look at that to close that off. And then I agree that this housing development plan will take a long time, but we're working with partners to make it happen. And this is a strategy, and the action plan will continue to be developed. I've listened, and we will reflect on everything that the members have said tonight that you've contributed to. I will be circulating to all members all the affordable housing and housing that we've done over the years, so that you can actually see that we are doing the best as we can. And things change, like Councillor Light did point out. I will also mention that K&H, they're actually actively on the site for us at the moment. I know it's small, they're developing 8 houses in Golka for us. So they are part of our plan. So I will reassure, I will reassure you, you have picked up some wording. We will be looking at that, but believe me, we will listen to you. And thank you for your contribution. It's been invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. If everybody's okay to do this by show of hands, please can we vote on the recommendation as moved by Councillor Scott? We'll move to the consoles, please. Thank you. Thank you, members. That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on. Page 129, Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report 2017-2018 and Scrutiny Work Programme 2018-2019. Councillor Stuart Turner and the lead panel members will present this item. After all lead members have spoken, Council will have the opportunity to comment or to ask any questions. Councillor Stuart Turner, please. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to present this year's annual report to you all today, and along with the work programmes. So this year, just to be a bit different, we're presenting a summary of what we've done over the past year, but also a summary of what we aim to do over this coming year. This is the second year of the new panel structure, and the teams are developing really well. And when we do work in overview and scrutiny, we sign up to do it as a team, leaving party politics behind and aiming to come to a collective consensus. But I have made a point of highlighting Councillor Smage and the excellent work she's done on the Joint Health Scrutiny Panel. And I'm sure Liz will be the first to praise everyone on her panels and not take any personal credit for her work. But she sets a high standard as a lead member, and I realise how much time and commitment goes into the work. I must also mention our co-optees, who make a great contribution to our work. We usually recruit them on a 4-year basis, and we will be starting a new recruitment process in the next few weeks, with the aim of having a new pool of co-optees for the 2019-20 municipal year. The team we've had for the past 2 years have demonstrated a great commitment to the work of scrutiny. It's been a pleasure to work with them. We aim to make overview and scrutiny as public and as transparent as possible, as I think it is very helpful for people to be able to listen to the debate and understand the broad range of complex issues that faces the Council. In order to make scrutiny in the Council as open as possible, we've reinstated the social media. We've continued to send out bulletins 3 times a year, and you should have one in the next couple of weeks. And we've developed some new website pages. We'll be in the Council section of the website, and that's got a go-live date for the end of next week. We also hope to bring more information through to Council to share with you all. The work programmes for all the panels are included in the main agenda, so I'm not going to cover all the details. You will be able to see that the Management Committee maintains a statutory responsibility for community safety and flood risk management, and we maintain an overview of cross-cutting issues like corporate performance and the transformation of the Council. And it was interesting to hear the debate earlier today around flood risk management, because we are in the process of having a new flood risk strategy developed. The past 5-year strategy comes to an end this year, and at the request of scrutiny, a new 5-year strategy is being developed. We will get in a progress report on that on the 1st of October. We're also, as part of our community safety work, we've started looking at domestic abuse, which appears to be a growing problem around the country. It's not just here in Kirklees. It's something that I know many of us care about quite passionately. But I'm not going to take the limelight away from our lead members, because they do fantastic work, and I prefer our lead members to talk to you about the work they did and with their panels last year, and the work their panels have included in their work programmes for the year ahead. So I'm going to invite them all to talk to you in turn, and as we said, and then we'll take questions. The order will be Councillor Burke, followed by Councillor Walker, than Councillor Smage. And I've just learned today that Councillor Asif is very ill, so he won't be able to join us. He's not been able to turn up today through ill health. So if there is any questions around the corporate panel, I'll do my best to answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart-Turner. Councillor Burke, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll go through the highlights for the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel. Starting during the 2017-18 municipal year, the panel considered leadership arrangements and priorities for children's services, including the new partnership arrangement with Leeds. The partnership arrangement with Leeds was agreed in July 2017, and the Children's Panel has seen a good working relationship between the authorities, which has resulted in increasingly positive Ofsted reports. The letters from Ofsted are seen as improving, and this is a picture that we can see from all of the letters that we've received. There were concerns in 2016 about children being left at risk, whereas most of the other recent report found no children at unidentified risk. Strong foundations are now being seen by the Children's Scrutiny Panel. The work being done is around improving assessments, so they're all being done to a high quality. The Scrutiny Panel will continue to monitor the quality of these assessments going forward. Home to school transport. The panel received information relating to the two transport policies, Mainstream and SEND. The panel has asked that the policies be brought back to the panel for comment. SEND and Ofsted inspection. All local authorities, SEND departments will be inspected. Kirklees is no exception and awaits details of when this will be. The panel has met with officers on a number of occasions to consider their self-evaluation form. The panel is assisting the SEND department with two pieces of work: the voice of the parents and the quality of the education, health and care plans. Work is continuing throughout the 2018-19 year. As part of the work programme, we've undertaken to visit as many places as we can, so we can get a more thorough and in-depth insight into what takes place. So the panel has taken a number of visits throughout the year and continues into next year. The panel has found these visits extremely helpful in getting to the core of the service. Members of the panel have been impressed with the members of staff that they have met, and this has helped to produce some positive outcomes. The panel has visited number 11, the drop-in centre. The panel was shown around the new facility and were pleased to see the services that were offered. The panel will be considering what the care offer is for care leavers in Kirklees and how they can best be supported at a critical time in their lives. We visited Children's Home Woodlands in Linley. The panel was shown around the Children's Home, and again we're pleased with the openness of staff in explaining the issues and ensuring that everything was working well. And we also looked at other areas that could have been improved. And this was a drastic change from our experiences previously, going back a number of years, where we didn't have that openness and frankness and exchanges with staff members. The panel has heard all the Children's Home in Kirklees are now going to be reduced to a maximum of 4-bed facilities, and that new and different properties are being considered throughout Kirklees. As part of the consideration of SEND mentioned previously, the panel have met with PCAN as parents of children with additional needs to gather information about how the SEND department work with them and how this can be improved. Another meeting will take place next week, following which details will be reported back to officers to consider and implement if appropriate. Panel members are meeting with parents and carers who are or previously have been home educating their children. The reason that a parent chooses to home educate is varied, and the panel want to look at their reasons for this and how they have found the support from Kirklees. Kirklees would like to consider the offer for elective home educators, and the panel will consider the evidence from parents along with other local authorities and prominent home educating website owners and writers. Looking ahead, Councillor Bellamy continues to attend the meetings of the Improvement Board and report back to the panel. The panel will consider the following issues, again through the panel meetings, but also by going out and visiting appropriate groups. That is the new Children and Young People's Plan, the strategy for partnership working, early support. The panel has received a report around the new approach, and some members of the panel will be attending a full information briefing around this on the 2nd of October. The item will return to the panel later in the municipal year to explore what difference this has made to families, and in particular whether this will impact the number of referrals being made. The work will continue around supporting the SEND team in preparation for an Ofsted visit.
30 seconds, Councillor Burke.
The ad hoc panel considered elective home education will continue throughout the year. Kirklees would like to ensure that the best possible offer is available should a parent or carer choose to home educate their children. It is possible that Kirklees will consider refreshing their elective home education policy, and the work that the panel should complete doing this. The panel have been pleased to see the working relationships develop between the panel and officers within children's services. This has been really good to see as an improvement based on previous years. And the panel look forward to working with the new Director of Children's Services once appointed. I'd like to thank all of the panel members and co-optees for their contributions in attendance at the meetings. Also to the Cabinet members, Councillor Kendrick and Councillor Ahmed, for their support, enthusiasm and for their help in doing the work that we do.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Walker, please.
Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to talk about the work of the Economy and Neighbourhoods panel. Last year, we had two major themes, transport and housing. So actually, a lot of the things that we looked at are things that have been covered in the discussions that have happened in the Chamber this evening. Before Christmas, we focused on transport, and that really split into two main areas. The first area that we looked at was rail. And particularly, we were looking at the performance of rail services locally, and in particular, we were looking at the plans to develop the Transpennine upgrade. So we had some very detailed discussions around that, looking at the work of our officers and the plans of our officers, but we also managed to get the project manager, a gentleman called Kieran Duncan, who's in charge of the Transpennine upgrade. He came in and we had a private session to which we invited other councillors who've got an interest in transport. We also invited in other officers to the meeting to discuss with Network Rail what was happening with the Transpennine upgrade. That was particularly interesting. Some things have flowed from that. One of the things that is really interesting is that we've developed a project looking at how we can deliver young people with the skills and older people with the skills to take advantage of the massive opportunities that are going to be as a result of the immense amount of money that's being invested in both rail and road infrastructure improvement. And that's going quite well. We've got a whole team of people from right across a number of different partners, which is operating actually on a regional basis as well as on a Kirklees basis, which is moving forward from that work. One thing I think we would like to do more of around the rail industry is something that's been raised earlier, which is looking at our southern rail links, our links through the Penistone line to Barnsley and Sheffield and beyond. And in fact, Councillor McBride and myself have been discussing that over the last couple of weeks, really, how we can do further work round that. Obviously, since we had these discussions, there have been some quite grave disappointments, really, because at the point that, I think it was March, that Kieran Duncan came to tell us about the plans, he was expecting that an announcement would have been made about what was going to happen. We're still waiting for that announcement, but it is going to have an absolutely enormous impact on Kirklees, because a lot of the spending is going to be between sort of Dewsbury and the Stanish Tunnel in Marsden. It's a massive amount going to be spent, including redevelopment of stations, but also reconfiguration of the line and hopefully the electrification process. We then went on to look at roads. Councillor Bolt was very happy when his map, looking at the plans right across Kirklees, when the map finally appeared, and we had it on the screen up here, and we went through in some detail looking at the various proposals. They're obviously kind of work in progress, but we really did ask a lot of questions, a lot of searching questions about the proposals. We looked at some of the pros and cons of things, and really, I think, held the officers to account in terms of what was being planned. We then moved on to housing, and I think a lot of the things that we looked at are the kind of issues that have come up in the discussions today. So the issue of affordability. There's a massive crisis in Kirklees of a lack of affordable housing. Unless we address that, we are not meeting the needs of the people who live in Kirklees. We looked at housing delivery, so we scrutinised the historic performance in terms of housing delivery. We looked at what are the blockages, what are the things stopping us achieving a greater delivery, and looked at how we can improve that in the future. We looked at the regulation of the private rented sector.
30 seconds, Councillor Walker.
Right. Okay, yeah. So we looked at all these things in a lot of detail. We also looked at homelessness. I think Councillor Bolt, I would like to thank the fact that he brought that to our attention. We spent quite a lot of time looking at that. So very, very quickly, looking at what we're looking at this year. So we're going to look at things around economic development. We're looking at the refreshing of the Kirklees economic strategy, the new inclusive growth strategy, hopefully looking at how we can bring those two things together. Flowing from that, we're going to be looking at the skills strategy, the town centre strategy, the digital strategy, and the green space strategy. All of those things we hope to cover before Christmas. After that, after Christmas, we plan to look at Willis and air quality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. And now, Councillor Smage, please.
Okay, follow that, really. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's been involved in all the panels for health and social care. Those that are on now and those that have been on, thank you very much indeed for all your work. Health systems are not an easy area to scrutinise. They can be very complex, and I appreciate the demands for the panels on the level of work that is required. So we have the Wakefield and Kirklees joint health scrutiny, the Calderdale and Huddersfield joint health scrutiny, the West Yorkshire joint health scrutiny, and the Kirklees panel. And in my thanks, I'd like to also include the co-optees that sit on the Kirklees panel for their invaluable input into our discussions, and also scrutiny officers, because there is a lot of work. There is. I'm not going to go through the work programme, be relieved to hear, because it's in the papers and it is quite long, and if I went through the work programmes for all the panels, we could be here a while. So I thought I'd just pick up on one area, which is specialist wheelchair services, because I know there were some concerns raised about this from councillors. So this came to the panel last year after a series of issues relating to standards and quality of service. The CCGs have told scrutiny that they've put more money into this contract and are working with OpCare to try to resolve the demand and waiting times issues. And in 2008, the number of complaints that had been received had reduced, but there is still a long way to go. Wheelchairs need to be received when needed, and they need to be repaired in good time so that people don't have to put their lives on hold while they wait for their wheelchair to be repaired. They came to see us in August for an update, and they are looking at a redesign of the contract, and we'll be putting it out for procurement in early 2019 after they've been just talking to users of the service, which we thought was important that they actually got more information from users. And I think that's all I had. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Are there any comments on this matter? Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's unfortunate that the chair of the Corporate Scrutiny Panel can be with us today. But I'd just like to reflect on a comment that Councillor Stewart-Turner made in her introduction, where she said teams are developing really well. I'm afraid I disagree. I'm on my second year on the Corporate Scrutiny Panel, and have found it very disappointing. We don't really scrutinise very much at that panel, and it's something that I and other members of the panel have raised on a number of occasions. We tend to receive very high-level PowerPoint presentations with little detail, leaving us with little to be able to scrutinise. I repeatedly flagged these issues, but little has changed. And the same was of our most recent meeting, which was only a couple of weeks ago. There is much good work that the panel could be doing, but it needs stronger leadership and a clearer focus on specific issues where the intended outcomes are clear to both the panel members and to the relevant officers who are being invited to the scrutiny panel. And I'd appreciate Councillor Stewart-Turner's comments on that, because I know we've talked about this before, and I am concerned that we're in our second year and we haven't really started to get going. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor David Hall, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, first of all, to start with, again, adding my thanks to everybody that's been involved in scrutiny this year. When I first read this document, I went through, and the first thing I look at is outcomes. Because, you know, what's the point of doing something if you can't record the outcomes? And when I looked down, I thought, wait a minute, there's blanks in here. There's loads and loads of blanks. And then somebody more intelligent than myself pointed out I was looking at the work plan, so there wouldn't be any outcomes yet. So then I thought, well, now I need to go and read all the reports at the beginning, which is quite a dense document, actually. But it's not immediately obvious. It doesn't stand out what the actual outcomes were from a lot of the panels. And that might be to do with the way the document is written. For instance, you know, have there been any changes that have been made by the intervention of scrutiny prior to a document or a policy being approved by Cabinet or Council? Or indeed, have there been any recommendations to Cabinet or Council that have resulted in a change being made to a policy? Yes, scrutiny has an oversight role, and it always will, and some, of course, are statutory, and it's laid down what should be scrutinised. But I think it's really important that we need to see the impact that scrutiny is having. And the importance of that is to actually bolster the scrutiny itself, which is an important part of the Council. I'm not doubting anybody's commitment to scrutiny, because there's lots of people doing some very good work. But I do think there should be a greater focus on recording the outcomes that we can see. Because if we can't see the outcomes, you know, there's not much point in going through in the first place.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any more comments on this matter? Thank you. Right of reply, Councillor Stewart-Turner, please.
Yeah, first, I'd like to thank Councillor Taylor for his honest assessment of the panel. We have been trying to work with the lead member. We have had a new strategic lead from the Directorate to work with him. But I wouldn't want to criticise him in this arena. If he's got some concerns about the panel system, then I will have some private conversations with you and him outside of this chamber, if that's okay. We'll try our best to try and address the problems with your panel. And Councillor Hall, I quite agree with you. I'm hoping you'll see some improvement in next year's report. This year we've introduced action tables for each of the panels to try and record progress, because it's very hard sometimes with scrutiny is to be constructive and have early input to try and influence the decision, and then trying to evidence the impact you've had on the decision can be very difficult. But we've introduced some action plans, where little tables where we record the decisions at each meeting and try and follow those up. And that's something we did on the Management Committee last year, but I'm hoping this year all the panels will do the same. I've asked them all to do the same, so I'm watching that. And then the lead member templates have been changed throughout last year and this year to start to capture the outcomes as well. So they report back quarterly, they report back 3 times a year to the Management Committee, and in that report they highlight outcomes achieved. Because we all need to be very much outcome focused as an authority. It's something I care about a lot, and I'm hoping the report next year will try to capture that more. But it will also be included in the bulletins, where you will have an outcomes section within the bulletins that come out to you 3 times a year. So I'm hoping to start to see more development in that. It's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart-Turner. Please can we now vote to receive and note the report by show of hands? Thank you. Item 11, page 167, allocation of seats update. Councillor Sokol, please.
Madam Mayor, I move that in order to achieve overall proportionality, Council approve the amended ratio as set out on page 171.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor, I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Are there any comments on this matter? Right of reply, Councillor Sokol, please. Okay, then, using the consoles, please vote on the recommendation as moved by Councillor Sokol.
It's very democratic of you.
That recommendation has been moved. Thank you, members. I'm now going to hand over to Richard.
Council, given the time constraints in view of a 9 o'clock finish, in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 5.4b, the Chief Executive, in consultation with the Mayor, has agreed to reorder the agenda and take agenda item 14, holding executive to account, as the next item of business.
Thank you. So moving to item 14, holding the executive to account. For part A of this item, Council will receive portfolio updates from the Leader of the Council and the Cabinet Member for Children's Services. Oral questions and comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios and on relevant Cabinet minutes will be at part B. Can I now invite Councillors Pandor and Kendrick to present their portfolio updates? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bearing in mind we've only got an hour left, I don't plan to take too long on this. Just a quick situation analysis in terms of where we are. Kirklees is a very diverse population. We've got a mixture of rural and urban areas, and we've got villages and communities that are actually very diverse within our local borough. The beauty of our borough, I think, is not just the diversity of its people, but the diversity of our towns. Berkshire is very different to Holmfirth, is very different to Dewsbury, and so on. We've also got some fantastic businesses that are great at manufacturing. I feel that we can do more, which I'll come on to in a minute. There are a lot of small and medium enterprises in our local borough. And again, there's a lot of opportunities around there that we can actually develop. And last but not least, we have the only Premiership football club within...
Sorry, can we have a bit of hush, please?
We have the only Premiership football club in Yorkshire. I'm really pleased that this is the second year running that we're actually in the Premiership. and again, we can do a lot more work around the football club. I don't want to catch or go over what the children improvement journey is, because my colleague Viv will actually cover that, so I don't want to steal her thunder. But there's been some great work that's been done around that agenda, and thank you very much, Viv, and I'll let you cover all that detail. We've got ambitious plans in terms of our housing development that meet the needs of Kirklees residents now and in the future, and I'll come on to that in a minute as well. Health inequalities. Since I've been a councillor, we've talked about this issue time in, time out, and the situation that we're in now actually is the picture getting better or worse, and the evidence there shows that it's getting worse. We boast about the fact that people are living longer, but is the quality of life there? A lot of the people I've seen who are in their 70s, 80s and 90s, the quality of life isn't there, so we have to actually start thinking about doing something around that. Education attainment at Key Stage 2, 68%, sounds good, but based on the national average, we're actually falling short by 3 points. National average is 71%. I want to make sure that we actually step up the pace around that, and I'll talk about pace later on. We had an away day with our cabinet, and we thought that we'd actually sort of just take a restock of what our priorities are. And the list was massive, but it's very important that we actually stay focused in what's important to us. We want high quality children's services, that's a given. We have to do that, not least because our Ofsted report was very poor, but it's actually we owe that to our young people, especially the ones that are vulnerable and have got issues around safeguarding. Health services for Kirklees residents. I'm really pleased that a few weeks ago we as a council on a cross-party basis managed to actually put a plan in place. And Jackie, you were on holiday, but I'm really, really proud because that was one of my highlights of my leadership so far. But we actually put a plan together to our communities that the plan that the NHS has provided is broken. Dewsbury's broken, Huddersfield's broken. And what we have put forward, it might be an idea, but because we have got political will and because all the leaders are behind it, I feel that something good will come out of that. You know, we might not get what we want in its entirety, but I'm optimistic that something good will come out of that, and that's because this council is at its greatest when it actually works on a cross-party basis, and I really believe that. Happy and healthy lives for people in Kirklees, again, that's a given. You know, the place-based stuff, the leisure stuff, the nighttime economy, and you know, getting that work-life balance, and how do we actually make sure that we actually provide a good environment and a good place within all the areas of Kirklees. That is a priority. And I mentioned the attainment of school children from 0 to 16 and beyond. And I want to make sure that when they actually go away from university, we don't have the brain drain situation. We want to make sure that them youngsters come back into Kirklees and put something back. Economically, we need to do better. And when I go on to answer Councillor Smith's question around China, I'll elaborate that on a little bit, and I hope that Councillor Smith actually fully joins me and says, well done, Shabir, you've done a great job, we're fully behind you. We need to make the most out of Kirklees resources. Now, I don't mean pounds, shillings and pence. We have some fantastic communities. We've got a lot of capacity in our communities, and we can do a lot with our capacity in our towns and in our places. I'm sure many of the councillors who are in this room became councillors, not overnight, but they actually cared about their local community, they actually did something in the local community, and fate brought them to the council chamber. Sometimes they think, God, what have we let ourselves in for? But we're in it for the long term, and we have to actually make sure we work together to actually put something back, and we owe that to our communities. Sustainable homes, Councillor Cooper mentioned this several times, and I think Councillor Cooper is right to actually keep on going on about this. And I mentioned in my presentation that when I went to Qingdao in China, they've got some brilliant schemes that are going on in terms of sustainability. Now, China might be one of the most pollutant countries in the world, but they're doing big things to actually get that carbon reduction down. Because one thing I got inspired when I went to China was they actually want to work with people across the world, and I hope that we can work with them, and I hope that we can work on this agenda with them, and I hope that other councillors actually join me in that as well. People, places and partners. that is the driving force behind this strategy. Putting people first, putting that relationship first, and developing solutions together is a priority for me. We have to value our workforce, we have to value our communities, and we have to value young people who are actually tomorrow's citizens and who will make the future for a better Kirklees. Diverse places, diverse communities, I've talked about that, that is a given. Some of the most successful towns and cities across the world are where people live together in harmony, understand their differences, and it's not about toleration. Toleration is, oh, okay, I'll just deal with you. It's about getting on with people, and that's really, really important. And the places and the environment that they are around matters to a great extent, because wherever you live and wherever the environment is around you, and that actually shapes that person. So I think that's really, really important. And working out with our partners, I think Councillor Light mentioned this, and I think he's right. We have to make sure that our partners are a critical driving force, and I'm glad that Cathy actually acknowledged Councillor Light's issue around K&H. You know, and K&H is a driver. But again, we have to make sure that organisations like K&H, you know, we have to make tough decisions around that. Because Robert was right when he mentioned that K&H had a purpose. The purpose was to develop and deliver the decent home standard. It was a Labour government then, and the only way we could actually have addressed the £93 billion backlog was to actually get an arm's length company. And the Labour government at that time actually changed the law to actually allow that to happen. It's done some great things, but the purpose was to deliver the decent home standards. So we're actually going for a review, and I've been very, very straight. We will have a professional, robust review, and then we will make a decision. So nothing's ruled in, nothing's ruled out, but we will make the best decision that we can to deliver the services to our residents, and I think we owe that to our residents. Legion of collaboration. Again, this is something that's very, very important to this council chamber. What I'm doing is I'm actually now chairing a panel called the Regional Growth and Public Policy Panel. That's really, really important because whatever that panel does has an impact at a local level, and it's about making sure that our residents in Kirklees are prosperous and actually share that economic regeneration at a local level, and we put something back in the communities. Representing Kirklees at a regional level, that's also important, and we have to make sure that we actually stay on the front foot with the devolution agenda. Whatever is going to happen in terms of what the proposals that will come through, we need to make sure that we actually have the best deal for Kirklees, and we have to also make sure that the accountability is around that. My priorities as a leader, very, very straightforward, very simple, very focused. Devolution. We have to have a devolution deal. If we don't get a devolution
30
deal...
30 seconds, Councillor
have I got... Have I? Very, very quick. I've missed a load of stuff out as well. Anyway, Madam Mayor, very quickly, devolution, we have to have a devolution deal. We have to tap into the millions that is out there. Other regions have done it, we can do it as well. Inclusive growth, I've already commissioned Cless to actually do some work, and there will be some quick wins around that. Inclusion and diversity, I've talked about narrowing the gap. But one quick thing I want to talk about, there's some of the details in terms of what we're going to do in terms of our investment priorities. But Robert Light mentioned pace. Pace will change. Pace will actually go faster. So as the Cabinet, we are actually up to it to make sure that we actually do things quickly. I hope officers can actually be on that journey, and I hope the councillors in this chamber can be on that journey as well. Because unless we actually deliver the outcomes that we are talking about, then all this means nothing. And I don't mind being the front face of the council, but I am only as good as the council chamber. Politics will play its part, I accept that. But like I said, we are best when we actually work together, and I believe we can work together. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. How was that?
Thank you, Councillor Pandor.
Questions from here? Right.
Next presentation. Yeah. Councillor Kendrick, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had an Ofsted inspection in October 2016, and I bet no one in this chamber doesn't know that we were found to be inadequate, that children and young people in Kirklees were at immediate risk, and that there was wide systemic failure judged by Ofsted, and that's where we started from. Part of the process when you're found like that as a local authority is to have 6 monitoring visits. We've had 5 now. And that after 6 monitoring visits, we as a council will be open at whatever time Ofsted choose to a full inspection. So we're going to have another monitoring visit before the end of December this year. The last monitoring visit took place in July, and the letter following that visit is in the public domain. And I don't know if every councillor has seen that, and if anybody hasn't seen it and wants a copy, if you email me, I will make sure you get a copy. This monitoring visit focused on 5 areas to do with child protection plans, and each time Ofsted come on a monitoring visit, they come and look at a different area of the council. They decide, we negotiate it a bit, but they decide what they're going to look at. And they looked at the quality and timeliness of assessments, the multi-agency response to children in need of help and protection, consideration of children's individual needs in assessments and planning, complaints from children and their families and how we dealt with them, and the effectiveness of management oversight and challenge. Prior to the monitoring visit, we produced as a service a self-assessment. And for me, one of the greatest things, certainly on the last 2 monitoring visits, and the comforting things for me, because it's not a comforting place to be, is that Ofsted have said our self-assessments are robust and clear, and that we know what's not right yet, and that we've got clear plans as to what we're going to do to put it right. And that is a big deal. It doesn't sound it, but it really is. We are starting to see improvement in children's service in both the recent monitoring letters, but the July one more than ever. And one of the key things for me, and the most essential, was that Ofsted found no children in Kirklees with unidentified risks. And you might think, oh, what does that mean? Children, there will always be children who come into our care or at the edge of care where there is an identified risk. The problem is when we haven't spotted it and we haven't put in place plans to deal with it, those plans don't always work because of all sorts of conditions, but it's about getting it right. And one of the other things that was a huge comfort to me, because it's driven me mad as to how you make a change, was that the inspectors reported increased pace of improvement. You know, I kept thinking, they kept saying, oh, the pace isn't fast enough, it's not, it's slow, and you think, what on earth is it you've got to do to make that change? And I can't take any credit for it. It is the people who work in children's services who've done that, but there is an increased pace of improvement, steady progress made, and I'll give you some of the pluses in the letter. Morale is much improved in the service, and that's a real key thing. We had people in our service whose morale was way, way down, feeling unhappy, unloved, unlistened to. There's improved management oversight, which is vitally important, and an improving multi-agency response to children at risk of significant harm, and so on. And that sounds all great. But it isn't all fixed, and I'll be absolutely honest with you, and there's a long way to go. But we are on it, and I am convinced that we're on it. I'm not a fool, and I have looked really hard. In the letter, there's recognition that lots of actions taken and developments put in place were having a positive impact, and that there were others that it was too soon to tell, because these things do take time. However, it isn't the whole story. Whilst this letter acknowledges we've increased the pace of improvement since the monitoring visit. There are still many issues to be addressed. And we haven't stood still. We don't think, right, we're there, stop and wait for the next monitoring visit. So I'll give you a bit of a flavour of where we are. The number of agency workers has reduced from 70 to 10. There will always be some agency workers because suddenly someone becomes long-term sick, suddenly somebody leaves, is bereaved or whatever, and there is always a need. You can't leave a hallway, you need that particular cover, but from 70 to 10. We've recruited 45 social workers. Some of them are newly qualified, but we've also recruited a whole range of very specialist and experienced not principal social workers, because you can only have one of those, but experienced social workers who monitor and supervise and co-work cases with them to help them develop into the social workers we need. Casework recording is a huge issue. The system we used, not good enough. It allowed all sorts of things to go wrong. On the 18th of September, the new case recording system will go live. Staff have been trained on that and will still be trained on that. And live cases are currently being, migrated across. I'm getting the IT phraseology here. So, and that will really, really help. I don't expect to see huge changes in that for several months because, again, it's a time thing. We're continuing to review and challenge cases of children with child protection plans, and the numbers of those have gone down, and I'm convinced because of the challenge and how we've been looking at them and reviewing them. I say we. I've done none of this work, but I'll say the royal we. The Specialist Accommodation Board that the Council has is also working on sites that the Council owns and so on to provide some more children's care homes, 4-bedded homes, some semi-independent living for care leavers, which we desperately need, and increased provision of school places for children and young people with social, emotional and mental health needs, which I think is a huge plus forward. Membership of the Corporate Parenting Board, and the Corporate Parenting Board has worried me greatly how to get it right and move it forward. It has improved. It's improved in terms of its representation. We have representatives from Children in Care Council, Care Leavers Forum, to hear the voice of the child. That was missing in our assessment. We have a place now for the Chair of Children's Scrutiny. I hope it can fill it or send someone along because we do want scrutiny's interaction with us. And we've got a foster carer representative because that's really important. Somebody said something the other day and I'll steal their quote. Somebody said, foster carers, they've been on the same journey as children's social care. So they've had tough times and perhaps we've not done right by them either. The caseload has been an issue, and it still is at times. It is now, the average is 18 cases. The target is 20 as a total, as a maximum, but some teams' caseloads are higher, like the assessment team tends to get a flood of cases in. But data on caseloads is looked at by the head of service every week, and where caseloads are too high for particular individuals or teams, then she investigates that and looks at the reasons why and what we can do about changing it. Oh, it's flashing and I've not finished. Next steps. The key priority is looking at children in need cases. So are we getting the assessments right? Are we making a difference there? We're currently in the process of recruiting a Director of Children's Services. And
30 seconds, Councillor.
Yeah,
I am going to let you carry on.
Thank you. I won't be too long. If you hear snoring, you can stop me. We expect someone to be in post, hopefully, in the new year. And that is a big stage for us. That was with the agreement of the DFE and the Commissioner. But it doesn't mean our partnership with Leeds will cease. That would be the wrong thing, and it has only been going just over a year. In addition to working to improve services with social care, we're looking at developing early support and educare services. It's great at the children in care and young people in care and care leavers, but if you don't do something about stopping some people who don't necessarily have to come into care, but if we get the things right at an earlier stage. So we have improved partnership engagement, further recruitment to family support service, a family group conferencing team that's now increased, spending the money, Jackie, from 3 to 12 officers, so they can do at least 320 family case conferences a year, which is a big shift. We've got a multi-systemic therapy team set up that works with children, young people, 11 to 17, who are in danger of coming into care or custody because of their behaviour. And it's a very proven piece of work. I've looked at what's happened elsewhere in the country. And a family mental health service. It's there to provide early support to parents with mental health issues. Because some of those, when families start to split about and struggle, that's when children come into care. And isn't it sad we can't prevent that? The individual work of the Improvement Board continues to challenge and develop good practice, and I can only thank Eleanor Brazil. She puts me on the spot an awful lot, quite rightly. The relationship with and the challenge from children's scrutiny, we absolutely appreciate, and they are helping us get information that helps us get our services better. The Corporate Parenting Board provides regular oversight and challenge to the service, and when the Improvement Board, when that wonderful day comes when we are not inadequate, when the Improvement Board ceases, corporate parenting will continue because that's their job, to do that week in, week out challenge. And we recognise there was some training that would benefit Corporate Parenting Board, and that course has been opened up to all councillors because we are all corporate parents. I think it's tomorrow morning for one session, there's another session Monday night, but I do know the service has had quite a lot of councillors who couldn't make either and have said, can you put me on one in the future? And we will do that. I think that helps all of us. I have a load more to say, but Madam Mayor, I cannot finish without expressing my great appreciation of Leeds Council as our improvement partners, and particularly to those officers in the service who stuck with us, and those officers who've come and joined us to help make things better and better outcomes for children and young people in Kirklees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Part A is now complete. We will move to Part B. Are there any questions, comments to the Leader of the Council? Councillor Cooper, please.
Saying how appreciative I am that Councillor Kendrick's in that role and at a high-risk area for us, and it's very comforting to know she's there. A question for the Leader. One of the big elements of the Labour budget last time, one of the things which was one of the headline areas was the investment in town centres. And millions of pounds were allocated for investment in town centres and regeneration. And the criticism at the time was saying, how are you going to spend all this amount of money in this amount of time? To spend that sort of money, you're going to have master planning. You're going to have, and that takes a couple of years at least. You're going to have staff in place to deal with that. So my questions are really about what is the timetable for that master planning? When's it going to start? When's it going to finish? Are all the staff that we need to carry out that work recruited and in place? How will members be involved in that? How will we as members be involved in that process of helping in our town centres? And how will the public and other bodies be involved in that master planning process? For Huddersfield, I'm thinking particularly a question about how does this marry up our investment with the Huddersfield bid by Huddersfield Partnership? How does that work? And I'd be interested in your views on those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. There was actually more than one question, I think, there. Cute. Councillor Panda.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. He's right. There is a massive piece of work to do, Madam Mayor, and I will not underestimate that and actually saying that it's going to be easy. The master planning has been commissioned, and part of that master plan will be actually the details in terms of the timescales, milestones, and all that will actually be done. And as soon as that is done, I will share that with everyone in this council chamber. In terms of staff, Madam Mayor, again, we have lost thousands of staff, and the staff that we lost and the staff that actually suffered the most were the staff within the regeneration of place directorates and services. And as I speak, we are actually focusing on that. We're actually trying to use our resources at the combined authority level, because a lot of this actually links into the combined authority. And again, I've asked Jackie that we need to actually put pace in terms of making sure that we put the right staff in the right place. But again, Madam Mayor, the ambitions are big, the pace is going to be fast. But I'm confident that we will get there once the master plan is in place. In terms of members are a backbone and integral part of everything this council does, Madam Mayor. That's why they're here. And what I will do is I will make sure that we talked about those in the scrutiny annual report earlier on, so they will be the ones that will actually do that on a formal basis. At the same time, what I will do, like we have been doing in previous years, is to actually get forums and subgroups and work groups in place. The problem we have, Madam Mayor, though, and I've seen this firsthand, and I've got evidence to back it, that no matter what you do, and no matter how many councillors you invite, and I'll give you one example, it's only me and Viv, right, yeah, on one particular day that turned up. Now, if there is a magic wand, Madam Mayor, that I can actually go abracadabra, and they all turn up, that'll be great. But I'm going to try that even harder, and I hope that members will actually, make sure that they take their role very, very seriously. I don't want to focus too much around a particular locality. I understand Councillor Cooper, he talks about Huddersfield Town Centre, which is part of his ward, but we have to look at every single town centre and every single place, and we have to treat every single councillor with the same respect. And what happens in one area should also be happening in another in terms of engagement and consultation. But I will give you my commitment that we will do that, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given the great social and economic achievements that China has delivered since the Chinese government ditched its communist and commitment to communist and socialist principles, will the leader commit to do the same as Kirklees leader?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Pandor, please.
Madam Mayor, the kind of ambitions we have in this council, and for me to deliver them, I'll have to become a dictator.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, you clearly enjoyed your visit to China. Can you tell us what tangible benefits for the residents of Kirklees have you returned with as a result of your trip?
Councillor Pandor, please.
I'll give Councillor Smith the benefit of actually asking this question now. And based on that, I've got a very robust answer. First and foremost, Madam Mayor, this is not just about the combined authority. I actually went there to actually put Kirklees on the map. And one of the key messages that I actually relayed over, that we are Kirklees and we are open to business. And even before I went, Madam Mayor, the kind of inquiries I was getting was amazing. There's something called WeChat. Now, this is a Chinese version of WhatsApp. And when I got there, the number of contacts I made with real deals that people want to do in Kirklees, I was amazed that we should have done this many, many years ago. To give you an example, Madam Mayor, Kirklees have been in partnership with China, Hangzhou, for 30 years. Bradford have also been working with them for 15 years. But I actually use my charm and my glamour. And even before I got there, Madam Mayor, right, they said, when can we come and do a deal with you? Anyway, already we've got some links with Joshua Ellis, who are a manufacturing base. And they actually went on a journey a few years ago. And when you meet the Chinese, it's not like, you do a deal. It's very, very informal, Madam Mayor. You've got to start building relationships. And I'm really pleased to say that Joshua Ellis, who are from Batley, I believe, managed to get a deal
Can we
straight
just
away.
have a bit of hush again, please?
Anyway, Madam Mayor, I was saying about Joshua Ellis, a firm in Batley. Usually when you go first time, you never make a deal. But this particular firm from Batley made a deal. So it looks like folk from Batley actually have that panache to actually make things happen. Madam Mayor, the trip was actually the beginning of something great. We already have the university. We already have the university actually investing in the province that I went to. Can I continue, Madam Mayor? I could hear people talking there, but I think they gobsmacked. Anyway, Madam Mayor, I continue. Madam Mayor, China is actually the future. It's an economy that's actually second to America, with an investment of £136 billion outward investment. And I think the time is right for us to actually go there, because one of the things I mentioned earlier, Madam Mayor, the Huddersfield, you can all join me. You can all join me. Yeah. Madam Mayor, may I continue, Madam Mayor? Okay, Madam Mayor, the other thing is that, on a serious note, by going there on one visit won't make things happen. This is not the end; it's the beginning. And the kind of contacts I've made will actually deliver. One of the things I learned was an organisation called Connect China, who are based in the media centre. They are actually going to be working with us. The Huddersfield University have actually sort of got some contacts as well, and they don't just get students here. What happens is that students actually getting taught here, and they actually go there, and then the university commissions them to run some courses over there. There's also a company in Leeds. I won't give the name of the firm because it's confidential, but they've already arranged a meeting with me and some small SMEs to actually start the ball rolling in terms of how we can actually bring in investment and start to actually take our products and do exporting to China. So, Madam Mayor, the opportunities are great. Hopefully, I truly believe that this council chamber will actually get behind this agenda, because India and China are the growing economies of tomorrow. We can't sell Huddersfield, we can't sell Batley, we can't sell Dewsbury, we can't sell Kirklees by shouting from the town hall steps. We have to get around there, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Councillor Smage, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noticed in Councillor Pandor's priorities, he had narrowing the gap. It's a large area of work, that. So can he tell us what outcomes he's looking for from that and how he's going to deliver on that priority?
Councillor Pandor, please.
Madam Mayor, narrowing the gap indeed is a big area. If we can just reduce the life expectancy from one part of the borough to another part by 1 year, that will make massive differences within Kirklees. What did I say? Sorry. Yeah. Well, basically, if we can actually make people live longer in places that have got major debt poverty compared to the areas that are affluent, that will be a big impact we have made. Also, in terms of education attainment, depending on your socio-economic background and where you live and how you've been brought up, based on areas where there's major deprivation, again, the evidence is there that education attainment is not as good as it should be. One way that will make that work is for my portfolio holders, and the portfolio holders and the work programmes that have been developed over in scrutiny. And again, Madam Mayor, it's a big area of work. Another area in terms of narrowing the gap is around skills, employment, and basically making sure that the skills agenda is actually sort of like put on the front of the council agenda, because one of the things we do is actually pay our apprenticeships very poorly, and one of the things I've actually asked officers to do is to actually look at making sure that we actually do pay them the minimum wage. And again, I'm happy to report on the details around that at a future meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Panda. Councillor Smears, do you have a supplementary?
I'm sure I got an answer to my question, really, is how you're going to deliver. I take it that those are your priorities, but other people are going to deliver them. I'm not quite sure where you're going with that one. You mentioned life expectancy, and people with limited long-term illness across the years is expected to grow. So how are you going to turn around that for people?
Councillor Pandor, please.
Outcomes are dependent on our partners, and one of the things I put on there that we actually developed more collaborative working with our partners, especially around stuff around the health agenda. You mentioned long-term illness. It's not something that this council can do, Madam Mayor. You know, unless we actually get our health service configuration and the system work properly, then we're not going to get that right. So when I say narrowing the gap, right, yeah, that's my priority, right, yeah, but I won't make any sort of illusions appear that we're going to address that overnight. You know, these issues have been around for a long, long time, and the back of this government actually cutting billions of pounds, from our social care budget, making sure that, we actually deliver on our agenda is going to be challenging, but, we have to get it done. It's not going to happen overnight, but, we have to have some ambitions regarding how we're going to actually tackle these issues. And it's not just going to be the council. There are other players that we will have to work with, Madam Mayor. And what I want to do is make sure that we actually get on the front foot and start to deliver plans. And if they can't deliver, then we have to hold them accountable and campaign. And everybody needs to pull together. It's very easy, Madam Mayor, to actually say that how are you going to do this, how are you going to do that. But what I would say is how are you going to actually get the government to actually make sure that the backers, how are we going to make sure we're going to get the money behind us? Yeah? It's not going to happen by me just standing here and Councillor Smith asking questions, right? Yeah, it's very easy to actually be on the front foot and say, what about this, what about that? But, she's got a good remit with her social care hat on. There's a big role for her to play as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Councillor John Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noticed that one of the priorities of the leader was devolution, and I think that's something that we would all support. Is he truly committed to devolving powers as far as he can?
Councillor Pandor, please.
Yes, I am, Madam Mayor.
Supplementary, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased with that answer. I represent an area that has a parish council. I know that parts of the district are parished or have town councils, and that there are many people in the northern part of the borough that are very keen to have their own town councils so that they can engage at a local level and have power devolved to them and be active citizens. Will he be supporting the campaigns that are running by Dewsbury and Batley to have town councils?
A question that came up question time in Dewsbury Town Hall, and I understand that there are campaigns that are running, and one of the things I said was that if local people want to develop campaigns and get behind devolving powers at a local level, then I don't see any reason why we should stop that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. I am conscious of time. We have just less than 10 minutes left, so if anybody who's indicated they want to speak, if you could ask questions either to Councillor Pandor or Councillor Kendrick. Okay, but I would like, obviously, and I'm sure you would like to finish at 9 o'clock. Okay. So, Councillor Light, please.
the priorities that the leader has outlined for the council and the cabinet are clearly areas where the council is failing, and after 9 years of Labour administration clearly needs to improve. Can the leader share with us how he will deliver that improvement and what he will do and when to ensure we achieve improvement for all of those areas of priority?
Councillor Panda, please.
Madam Mayor, we haven't actually...
Supplementary, Councillor Light.
If the leader can't tell us how he will deliver his priorities now, perhaps he will commit to come back to the next council meeting and explain how he will deliver and what he will deliver against each of the priorities he set out today. Because otherwise, what we just heard from the leader is completely worthless.
And
I'm happy to come back, but what I really need to do is have the whole council meeting himself and go through detail. Because, I don't mind doing that. I don't mind coming back here and going through detail, but I really need the whole council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Panda. Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Part of your presentation there was saying that you would play your part in the devolution. Given that from what we hear now, West Yorkshire is more or less totally put out of the devolution deal because of the leaders of West Yorkshire Council spapping about so long, north and east. Did you hear that comment from
Councillor Panda.
Councillor Hall has got wrong information on this guy. Let me clarify the situation. The devolution deal that's on the table is for 18 local authorities to actually have a devolution deal. The South Yorkshire deal has been signed. The two local authorities, Doncaster and Barnsley, will have the option to come out. At the moment, the government actually is dragging its feet, and that's why the South Yorkshire Mayor has no power. That's what we agreed with the government, and that's what we will let go of. And all the leaders in North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, have actually agreed with that, and that's based on reasons that those who are all there, behind that. What Councillor Hall is talking about is a letter review, which is very, very different to the devolution. The letter review says very clearly that you can have a West Yorkshire left or a North Yorkshire left. At the moment we have a bit of a mixed bag. So what we've agreed in West Yorkshire is to actually join with North Yorkshire, and my
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Councillor David Hall, I'll give you a supplementary and then I will be closing the meeting. Councillor Pandor.
That is what our solution is. We have made it very, very clear, and the government is actually saying that we have a work to do. But they are dragging the feet. We are up for it, but it's up to the government. There is no other plan, that is the plan to move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Thank you, members. There's been some excellent debates tonight. Drive home safely. Meeting closed.